27, 2016 meeting to order. If you'll work with me on pledge of allegiance here. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call.
Yes, Director Davidson.
Here.
Director Radaman.
Here.
President Strange.
Here.
Director Mills. Here. And Director Underhill.
Here. Public comment is an opportunity for anyone in the public to talk about non-agendized items. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move to item 3, the consent agenda. Following items are expected to be routine, non-controversial. 3A, resolution of support for the creation of Center for Water Resource Management at Columbia College. David Egerton, General Manager.
Consent.
Oh, I'm sorry. So go ahead.
Second.
Good job. Open it up. Any discussion about it? Open it up.
Been there, done that.
Okay, public comment. See no public comment, I'll close that. Can we go ahead and take a vote?
Director Underhill.
Yes.
Director Mills.
Yes.
Director Radaman.
Yes.
Director Davidson.
Yes.
And President Strange.
I'll abstain. So the motion passes 4 yes and 1 abstain. And again, to avoid any potential conflict of interest, if I teach a course or whatever, I just didn't want to allow someone to be critical of that decision. So, okay, good. I would like, let's see, any other consent agenda? No. Awarding of contract. What I'd like to do in talking with staff is that we've got an individual that is here interested in the groundwater management Sigma presentation from out of the area within the region. But I'd like to, if possible, move then the new business up. Right now, he's got limited time to participate. So are we okay with that, or do I need to do?
You just need to do it.
Okay, so let's go ahead and move to new business to 5C.
He's in the room.
I'm sorry.
He's not in the room.
He's Mr. President, Peter Martin, our Water Resource Program Manager, is on his way in. I had asked to move this one up, and thank you, because we have Jason Bates, our Environmental Management Director for the county, who's here, and he's also their lead person on the groundwater management issues and working on Sigma, and so we have a very important partnership with him. And I'm just trying to bind that in here until Peter comes into the room. He just chased it down. He's probably straight his tie right now. He'll be right here. So,
Okay. We'll go through item 6 then. Old business, nothing to report. We'll check that one off. How about board reports as far as any information, feature agenda items? Mr. Davidson, would you like to comment on what you've been doing?
Not yet.
Not yet? Would you like time later in the meeting?
Perhaps, yeah.
Okay, so I'll go ahead then and maybe I'll pull in the rest of the group. Here comes Peter now.
that'll teach you never to move forward.
Yeah. So do you want to go right now?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I want to make sure we have time while Jason's here.
I'm sorry, I was under the, I misunderstood. I thought Jason represented San Joaquin County. Nevertheless,
I might throw out an item. On February the 16th, Agency 12, Agency on Aging, they oversee 5 different counties. Calaveras has got to step up, and we've got to make loud noise. We're part of the 5 groups. They're going to be having a public hearing down at St. Charles Place. That's interesting. I never had heard that. That building called that, St. Charles Place, at the corner of Mountain Ranch and 49, that building on the corner. From February 16th, from 1:30 to 3, they're going to be wanting to hear from adults 60 plus in Calaveras County, and that's a good almost 50% of our population. So we certainly want to be there, and we want to let them know what we think about nutrition, transportation, caregiver support, and other issues that are most important to the aging population.
Jeff, you gonna make that? Yeah.
Unless you need some help walking in.
Okay, over here. Please, start the presentation before it starts. Really get to your
That's the elders.
I want what's in your coffee.
Sorry for flipping the schedule on you at all.
All right, so we announced the item. I apologize for stepping out there and get this started. But so obviously, a lot of people have been learning about Sustainable Groundwater Management Act for the past year. It's been a large policy issue, statewide concern. I was just getting before you guys know. It was obviously part of a learning experience for myself as well, and I think Dave and I were figured it was really important to go ahead and get you educated on it so that we can start moving forward with some sort of decisions in the future. So just an overview of the presentation today. We're going to talk about the legislation that led to the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. We're going to talk a little bit about the local groundwater and the impacts, specifically the eastern San Joaquin subbasin, which overlies portions of Calaveras County. Talk a little bit about timelines of implementation for SIGMA, which is the shorthand for Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. You'll hear a lot of people call it that. Current efforts in the basin that have already started with regards to basin management on our side here, and also potential future actions that may be necessary in Calaveras County in order to go forward with efforts on this. So a little about the legislation. It was signed into law by the governor at the end of September of 2014, became effective January 1st, 2015. The Department of Water Resources spent a lot of that last year starting to develop some of the actual policy to implement SIGMA. And so we're kind of slowly getting pieces and bits and pieces of how this is going to go as we go along here. It gives groundwater sustainability agencies, also known as GSAs, the authority to develop and adopt groundwater sustainability plans, also called GSPs, that are intended to manage the groundwater basin for the sustainable yield of the basins. Legislation imposes a strict timeline for adoption of these GSPs. Basins designated as critically overdrafted by DWR and Bulletin 118 must have plans in place by 2020. So, as a larger scope, groundwater supplies make up about 40% of supplies for the entire state of California. In 2014, the legislature, amongst some studies by NASA and others, started to investigate groundwater instability, shortages, and water quality issues sort of statewide. It's something that was starting to build up a lot of momentum. Governor Brown made it kind of his keystone piece of legislation during that time frame. Groundwater has been used to often supplement surface water supplies that are slowly becoming unavailable over time. As the surface waters of the state become more constrained, people have started to switch more onto groundwater, and that's also led to some of the issues statewide as well. So the legislation included many important definitions, including that of sustainable groundwater management. What is sustainable groundwater management? Which actually means, in the actual legislation language, the use of groundwater in a manner that can be maintained during the planning and implementation horizon without causing undesirable results. We'll get to what undesirable results are. Sustainable yield, which means maximum quantity of water calculated over a base period or long-term conditions in the basin, and including a temporary surplus that can be withdrawn annually from a groundwater supply without causing undesirable results. So those are kind of the key pieces of definitions that really will inform people's decision-making for these groundwater sustainability plans. So what are undesirable results? Basically, they're pretty broad, so this can be a challenge. Significant and unreasonable lowering of groundwater levels, reduction of groundwater storage, seawater intrusion, water quality degradation, obviously land subsidence, which has been talked about a lot, and depletions of surface water that are tied to the groundwater basin. So this is a quote from Governor Brown, and basically he was stating that a central feature of these bills that were passed in 2014 is that the groundwater management in California is best accomplished locally, meaning that he didn't want the state to have to come in and decide how people were going to manage their basins. So that was an important part of the fight for how this legislation is going to go.
And just to note, Peter, that was no accident. That was this was driven by AQUA and local agencies like us in this process to make sure that we didn't try to create a one-size-fits-all state approach and instead preserve local options, because there are examples. You'll hear a lot of the problems on groundwater management across the state, but there are examples of some very successful locally driven programs, and that's the model we want to replicate.
Yeah, Tim Quinton's right there.
Yeah,
From
I
AQUA
see
in that
that.
picture. So obviously AQUA had a large role in how this was drafted up.
Photoshop's amazing.
So we'll move on to talk a little bit about the Eastern San Joaquin Subbasin, which is of interest with regard to SGMA. The Eastern San Joaquin Subbasin has been listed as critically overdrafted since 1980, according to the Department of Water Resources Bulletin 118. Bulletin 118 sort of sets the boundaries of all the hydrologic, geologic conditions associated with the groundwater basin statewide. You'll see it often in relation to maps. And later, they gave some updates that kind of reset it with subbasins associated with some political boundaries and others. So the portion that overlies Calaveras County is in that Eastern San Joaquin subbasin. And a series of updates to Bulletin 118 over time have provided sort of various results of studies and et cetera that have updated that Bulletin 118 code. So it's had multiple updates over several years. So with regard to the Eastern San Joaquin Subbasin, as you can see, it's kind of bordered to the east with Calaveras County and portions of Stanislaus County. So portions of Calaveras County and Stanislaus County both overlie the eastern portion. And then it kind of moves out to portions of central San Joaquin County, where the majority of the basin lies.
Peter, just to also add on that one point, if you go back to that slide, you'll see, so it's just that portion of Calaveras County that is within that groundwater basin that is covered under the SGMA law. So our requirements, as we'll be talking about, will be forming a groundwater sustainability agency and implementing a groundwater sustainability plan apply to this basin. It doesn't apply to those areas in the mountain counties of fractured rock groundwater. So that's, I know there was a lot of interest when this law was adopted by many people on private wells, and we wanted to know, how does this impact me? And largely in the county, it doesn't affect you.
And it doesn't extend down into the Stanislaus watershed or basin.
Yeah, it's kind of bordered by, well, yeah, I guess you could argue that there's some there ties, but really it's mostly bordered by the Colony, Calaveras rivers. I gotta make sure I keep talking to the microphone.
Yeah.
Peter, have we identified how many landowners are within that area in our county, just our county?
You know, I don't know the answer to that. That's a good starting point. I think we're gonna have to make some outreach at some point, so,
Okay.
definitely.
Since everybody's bringing something up, it's interesting, Salt Springs Valley was named and discussed in this whole process. And yet it is an area that has issues.
Yeah, I think is Salt Springs, that's in Stanislaus County?
Well,
Is it there?
it's from Milton going east and then down.
It's a little reservoir
Okay.
Yeah.
below, Hogan Dam.
It's an entire area of salt basin.
Yeah, I think, when the maps were drawn up, it was, strictly upon geologic formations. So the extent, whatever they were calling the alluvial basin may not have extended into that area. So, but, the surface water obviously has some interconnectivity at some point we got to figure out. So thank you, Dave. I just wanted to give you a snapshot of the locality here in Calaveras County. As you can see, it's sort of bordered by Comanche to the north, and then kind of Hogan, is in the Calaveras River on the lower bounds, and then portions of Jenny Land and So this is the area that CCWD has a groundwater management plan for, but, obviously extends into a significant portion of the, western portion of Calaveras County, that there are a lot of folks on groundwater wells in that area too as well. So, with regard to CCWD's actions in managing that basin, CCWD adopted a groundwater management plan in 2003. There was an update in 2007. I'm sure some of the board members were here during that time. CCWD is the California State Groundwater Elevation Modeling entity for this region. Basically, we are part of a monitoring network that provides public data on groundwater levels in this portion of the basin. We have a series of
Excuse me, that's not the monitoring that we have known for all these years? It is, where we do the wells?
Yeah, I think I made a mistake in the board memo. I said biannually. It's actually
Yeah, I saw that.
Semi-annual, excuse me for that. We'll just pretend like that didn't happen. So,
But it is important to note, what he mentioned, that we have continued to do this and we continue to make an expenditure on this. So this has been an investment that we made and it positions us nicely to participate in this effort.
yeah. So it's basically a series of nested wells we own some of the property, and also we have volunteers that are part of a network of monitoring wells down there. They allow us access twice a year to go and take some measurements. There's some anonymity with where the actual wells are and the properties in some of them. But it gets uploaded into a database that DWR manages, and that's utilized by people just looking at groundwater elevation wells.
Do we still have some wells that we aren't allowed to monitor?
Oh, yeah, the majority.
Yeah. With regard to a lot of the data management, the county's Department of Health does take on some of that role, but it's mostly with kind of whatever well logs are available. There's not necessarily elevation.
It's important to remember, we have no authority with wells. I mean,
Right,
the county is the governing body for the creation of wells and inspections.
So we're just asking for permission or asking for the data, and if they supply it, fine.
Yeah. So, and also, there was a lot of technical reports that were developed out of that effort. So CCWD has done several updates with various technical reports that have become available for consumption as well. But I think the biggest thing to note about this is that it was all voluntary to up this
Right.
point. So we're in a new era where it's no longer going to be voluntary. We have to come up with a plan that is going to be mandated, and there's going to be some actionable items behind it.
So how many volunteer well owners have we had?
I think Jeff knows the answer to that, but I think it's 12.
It is 12. We've had some who have come in, fallen out, they've decided they do not want to participate.
Jeff, you want to go to
I'm sorry.
so we can get it on the
I should say this is one of the other duties that Jeff held before I was here, amongst many.
Good morning, Mr. President, members of the board. We started our groundwater monitoring program back in the mid-2000s, 2005, 6, 7. We received an 8303 grant in conjunction with USGS to be able to put a nested well system in the old Trinitas area. And so we had a number of wells, including our own, that we did monitoring. With the Cash Gym project, we signed up for, we were actually required to prepare a Cash Gym plan. Pat Dunn assisted us. He's been a consultant that's worked for groundwater for us for a number of years. He assisted us in creating that plan, identifying a potential private well owners who were willing to participate. They did a lot of work, and I have to also acknowledge Tom Jeffries, who's been a longtime resident of Calaveras County, knows the surveying business, knows a lot of people. We brought him on board to go out and do outreach with a number of these property owners because you have to sign up for the program and your information will be public. Because once it's on Cash Gym, it is public. The exact location of the well is not, but the groundwater elevation that we're tracking and so forth. So we've been working with this. We've had some come in, fall off, some come back in, but it's about a dozen. We've also incorporated some of our own wells in this program. And with the other part of the program was, if you remember back in 2010, I believe it was, we started this ag survey, ag study to see what we could do to advance agriculture in Calaveras County. Well, part of that process included doing some soil surveys. And Dylan Godet of NRCS he was based out of the Sonora area. NRCS, the last area that they were going to map for soil surveys is western Calaveras County. So Pat Dunn worked in conjunction with Dylan to identify areas where we're going to do groundwater monitoring and soil surveys at the same location. So we could kind of kill two birds with one stone, identify areas where there's potential agriculture. We could get the soil surveys to see if there's potential recharge capacity, because there's a lot of areas in western Calaveras County that are really not potential recharge areas because the aging of the groundwater is quite old, some of them up to 10,000 years old. So you know that you're not getting recharge potential. So it was a hand-in-hand study that we worked together, and again, Con Jeffries helped out. But we're struggling because people are concerned about their property rights. And that is something we're going to be facing for a number of years. But consistency is critical here, because you want a well that you can monitor over an extended period of time to watch that groundwater water elevations.
Great, thank you.
You want-
So, with regards to the timelines for implementation of Sigma, groundwater sustainability agencies, or GSAs, have to be formed by June 30th, 2017. That's sort of the most pressing date. Groundwater sustainability plans are going to need to be drafted by January 31st, 2020 for critically overdrafted basins. Eastern San Joaquin groundwater basin, which falls under that category. And the plan's implementation has to have a 20-year implementation timeframe over a 50-year planning horizon. Also, there's key dates where there's milestones that have to be met within that 20-year timeframe.
Are there any further, high or medium priority? We're dealing with one critically overdrafted basin. Are there any other basins in Calaveras County that touch Calaveras County that would fall into the other two categories?
No, but in Amador County, there's the Consumas, which will need to be coordinated with this plan, and that is, I think it's under a medium priority basin. So
Why does it have to be coordinated with this plan?
So DWR has some stipulations that all these plans have to be coordinated on a regional area outside, also with some of the other plans. So at some point, they will need to be coordinating with other entities in other basins as well. So they
How do
can't.
you coordinate separate basins?
I think typically it's to try to come to some consensus on data and how data is displayed.
Just to have some commonality in
Right. Yeah. There's no, governance as far as that goes. I don't see how that would work, but I think it's more for technical aspects.
So the plans don't have to overlap and be similar, it's just sharing of information that's required?
Correct.
Okay.
So some agreements to share data as well.
I didn't notice in your discussion here that the state has also said if we don't do this, they will do it for us.
That's correct. There is a backstop within the legislation. The county is the assuming backstop first, but if no one takes it up for any portions of the basin that are overlying that area, the state can take that out if they don't meet the deadlines. So those are the key critical dates to stop from any state intervention, which I don't think the state really wants to intervene. I think it's
They're giving us plenty of time to do it ourselves.
Right, yeah, so there's that too. So I'm kind of going to do the who, what, when, where, and why of GSAs. A GSA, kind of the who, is any local public agency that has water supply, water management, or land use responsibilities in a basin can decide to become a GSA. So a single local agency can decide to become a GSA, or obviously a combination of local agencies can take on that role through some MOUs or JVs, or any other kind of legally binding agreement. So There's opportunities for multiple agencies to become a GSA, or as well, you could have just a single GSA, as long as they have jurisdiction.
To be clear though on this, you apply for GSA status, and that's what some of the entities within this Eastern San Joaquin Basin have done, but that has to be approved by the state through DWR, so it's not automatic that will be approved, and there's certain things they're looking at. And I was at a workshop with the lead person from DWR on this, and his message to those involved was, if you just wanted to carve out your GSA based on your political jurisdictions without any relationship to the actual needs of the groundwater basin, that likely would not be supported. So we'll see if that's true, if that really comes to fruition, but it's something to think about as we move forward.
Yeah.
In our area, Dave, then, the three that most likely would be candidates would be Valley Springs, us, and the county. Would there be anybody else that could potentially be involved?
You know,
Some of the San Joaquin agencies?
Oh, I mean, in our county, though.
yeah, I think it has to be
But they don't think
jurisdictional.
Is this gonna be divided, I mean, is this gonna be separated by county lines? It doesn't seem like it's a basin, it's a San Joaquin basin, it goes, I mean, I've noticed in Stockton, there's already 3 very large agencies with some political clout that have already applied for agencies individually and not together.
Yeah, and I was gonna get to that, but I mean, at this point, San Joaquin County has already basically said they're gonna file, so that pretty much isolates Calaveras County outside of that political boundary, so.
We may get drawn into them, though, won't we?
Well, there was discussion at one time that all the agencies would form one large GSA, but it appears that the shots have been fired and people are starting to carve out.
And I don't know if that's in our best interest. Our solutions will probably be things that will, talk about water sales, water rights, our water rights, conjunctive use in Calaveras County. Certainly we want to be able to propose projects like that will make an obvious benefit to the entire basin, but will also benefit us locally. And so, I mean, I wouldn't be out there seeking San Joaquin partners at this time. I would rather have our independent point of view, just Calaveras County's point of view in relation to what we can add to the whole thing, and try to work it that way. That's my
And if the state mandates further discussion with other GSAs in the future, then we can do that.
Right, because there's going to, ultimately, if they want to actually do anything, they're going to have to begin to fund some conjunctive use projects and start to replace some groundwater pumping with surface water. I mean, those are the type of projects that we should be looking at when we look at our, what could we do to contribute to this.
And it's those type of projects that are beneficial to us and them, and would be a great opportunity for a partnership with San Joaquin.
And this is nothing new, we've been looking at these projects for decades. There are no new projects out there, they're just, new opportunities.
Now, will you be explaining,
Yeah,
the local public agency, have we done outreach?
Yeah, I don't want to get too far ahead of
Yeah.
ourselves, but, I mean, we'll get to that point with what's being proposed at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
So essentially then, all the GSAs will get together and at least collaborate on various things.
Yeah,
What we're talking about here is who needs to be a GSA or included in a specific GSA.
Yeah, and, I mean, right now, the proposal is still to have possibly multiple GSAs creating one GSP, which it seems, so there's gonna have to be coordination of that.
Yeah.
And as Peter noted early on, that's the first deadline applicable under the new law is the deadline for formation of GSA, and that's June of 2017. So that's the first thing on our list. And we don't have to decide that today, who's going to be in the GSA or what the boundaries are going to be. One thing we know for sure, we want to work very closely and hopefully be in lockstep with our partners in county, the county and Valley Springs PUD in particular. And if there's opportunities to consider other partners with other agencies downstream, it's something we would evaluate and bring to this board in time.
So the what of a GSA? What is a GSA? Obviously SIGMA requires the formation of local GSEs to form GSPs or develop GSPs and adopt GSPs. The Act provides kind of a little bit more authority for GSAs than typically was involved with the groundwater management plan that we talked about earlier. Those were mostly administrative. Obviously the Act gives authority to conduct investigations, determine sustainable yield, which we talked about earlier, measure and limit extractions, as well as impose fees for groundwater management, and also to enforce the terms of the GSP. That's not saying you have to do all those things, but those authorities are there. So one thing SIGMA does not authorize is it does not authorize a GSA to make determination on individual owners' water rights. And also, it doesn't supersede any land authorities that exist. Obviously, for planning purposes, the county still is the entity that is responsible for land use investigations.
Excuse me, there's a couple of statements in here that just really would bother me. Measure and limit extractions, impose fees. That makes us enforce the terms of the GSP. That makes us
Yeah, I mean, it's, obviously.
sound like a little police.
Yeah, this has some teeth to it, and
Uh-huh.
I think that's part of what the state wants to see, is he wants people to start taking responsibility within their own jurisdictions for it, so.
I haven't heard the word warrant powers in this discussion.
That's something I think there's a million, we have to recognize what we're contributing to the demise of the San Joaquin Basin. And it is nearly immeasurable. I mean, no, I don't care how many wells we have in the western part of the county, we are taking out 0.000 something of groundwater out of the basin. And so, I mean, I think what I certainly want to see out of this is we protect our groundwater rights to at least a similar capacity that is being extracted out of the San Joaquin Basin. Because, I mean, the reality of it is, if you want to protect the basin, if we want to protect the basin, we should oppose every subdivision or every walnut orchard that's being built in the San Joaquin County. I mean, that's the culprit. And I'm not saying I want to go do that. But that's the reality.
Right.
I mean, this whole policing action thing is, I want to see the first water official to go over to one of the walnut farmers that I've been working for and say, hey, I'm working your well, and I want to put a meter on it, and we'll see how that goes. Because I got a good hunch. I don't want to direct us into that sort of thing. I'd like to see us be solution-based and recognize that our extraction of the San Joaquin Basin is minute. And we want to add solutions to the problem, or add solutions as opposed to make any sort of statements that we will ever impose restrictions inside Calaveras County.
Right.
I say we'll do that when we equal the acre feet per acre that's being extracted out of San Joaquin County. That's when I'll say we're even. Right now, we're not even. And we need to protect that water for the 35,000 acres in Calaveras County.
Right, and we have more of a capacity to make those positive solutions here being the headwaters than anybody else in the San Joaquin Basin.
Right.
So it's more of a give than a take.
It's a greater possibility, and I do agree with both of you that we have an opportunity to be part of the solution to San Joaquin's problems.
I'm going to try to move through this real quick. I'm giving.
Are we moving too slowly?
So obviously we talked a little bit about the deadlines for filing as GSA. They're subject to government code associated with the noticing requirements for those formation. Just wanted to give you that information, and also it has to be filed within 30 days to DWR once that determination is complete. Where obviously all the high priority basins we talked about listed in Bulletin 118 need to form GSAs within that time frame. And why? It's the formation of GSAs is a functionally important step towards protecting the interests of all stakeholders within Calaveras County, and also in the jurisdiction of CCWD, and also providing local input on what that GSP is going to look like. So other considerations, GSAs are encouraged to engage additional stakeholders. We talked a little bit earlier about Valley Springs PUD. We're going to have to do some outreach maybe some other well owners, start to get some discussion on that.
Well, let me just bring something up. You know, we are having an ag boom in this basin right now. And I know Abbey Wells has just drilled quite a few wells there on Highway 26 near Trinitas. Certainly, whether or not they would be willing participants, you would hope they would. But I think that there's an opportunity for some large volume wells, newer wells, to at least reach out and ask them about participating with us.
Okay. It's good to know. And then also, we've already been working with staff at the county environmental health on this issue for quite a while. So in the event that nobody files by that 2017 date, the county becomes the backstop, and they would be the assumed role as a GSA. And also, in the event that nobody claims that area, then the state would have to step in. So a GSP, what is GSP? A GSP kind of has a certain amount of elements that are required. The planning assumptions that are stated in general plans are supposed to be incorporated into that. Many technical elements, evaluating the basin and the capacity of the basin, as well as recharge rates. Measurable objectives towards sustainability, which we talked about earlier. Also add needs interim milestones during that 20-year implementation timeframe. There's monitoring and management components, so technical components that need to be developed as part of those plans, as well as data collection and sharing components for those plans. And also annual reporting to the state with regards to the progress on the implementation. These are all things that DWR is sort of releasing slowly as to what those are going to look like. So GSA and GSPs, just wanted to give you an idea. This graphic is from DWR of what we could potentially be looking at here. You could have one GSA and one GSP. You could have multiple GSAs with one plan. You could also have multiple GSAs and multiple GSPs. So, what's being proposed right now is the multiple GSA number 2 with one plan. So that seems to be the course that we're going towards, because in the end, all the plans have to coordinate for the basin. So in some ways, unless there's extenuating circumstances or people have ideas about this, it seems to make the most sense that one plan for the sub-basin.
I don't know if that makes the most sense for us.
Yeah.
Just politically.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Peter, let's, maybe we can have our comments at the end of the presentation.
And so the state board had this graphic, just talking about the rush to form all these GSAs could potentially lead to disintegrated regional water management. It doesn't allow for regional concepts to be developed, partnerships within the basin. I talked a little bit earlier about the coordination aspects. Coordination agreements are required if there's multiple GSPs within one basin. So those are going to have to coordinate. They need the same data and methodologies. We talked about that a little bit. And they need some coordination agreements between the entities. Interbasin, so between the different basins, they need to evaluate if there's any adverse effects to one basin than the other. And also intro requirements for the 2 basins. So I just wanted to throw in this point too, that an important component of the GSP is going to be the requirement for evaluation of surface water supplies, which we do have surface water supplies in the county. Their interactions and the potential subsequent impacts to their availability associated with the groundwater sustainability plan development. This could include the evaluation of groundwater recharge or in lieu use. And this is a substantial opportunity for the county to play a role within the region, the larger region, and the basin with how groundwater sustainability looks in the future.
This is a really important point. I mean, and we've talked about that before, but this is our really thinking about this groundwater basin effect that's in critical overdraft, that capacity within the basin to put additional water in the ground, which is going to have to be done under this law, and it's going to have to analyze surface water that can be used to do that. It's an opportunity, really, you have to see it as a reservoir, like you would a surface reservoir, and it's an opportunity to store water that we have surface rights to, probably in partnership with other agencies, and again, be able to have the ability to continue to exercise beneficial use of that water resource for a number of different purposes, which could be of real benefit to our county and our community.
Keep going.
Thanks.
So just to give you an update on what's going on today, I haven't been at the first monthly meetings because they're held at the same time as this work group down in Stockton, but the Groundwater Banking Authority has created a work group, essentially focusing on, GSA, formation and additionally the coordination that's going to need to happen between those GSAs, and the information sharing, and also outreach to the outlying areas as well, along with technical resource development. They did file for a grant that was available through Prop 1 funds. It was only available to counties, not to large districts, and to do some of the technical development resources that will go into the kind of outline of the plan. So we've already gotten to this point, but several agencies within San Joaquin County have elected to become GSAs at this point. Those are, at least I know of, Stockton East, SSJID, the county, Lockford CSD, and I think the city of Lodi is also planning to at this point. Keep an eye on that. So for the future, we'll continue to establish outreach and coordination with local entities, stakeholders, and jurisdictions in the region that have an interest in the groundwater resources overlying the Eastern San Joaquin Basin, sub-basin in Calaveras County. We've already been working with county staff. County staff are here today. CCWD has many municipal users of interest to our operations within the Wallace and Burson area. And also we need to determine a course of action at some point for the formation in the region by that June 30th, 2017 date. So staff will continue to provide routine updates, through the general manager, and also recommendations to the board in the future. So stay tuned with regard to that.
Great, thank you, Peter. I'd like to, at this time, hear from the county representative if you have any comments or questions or anything. I know your time is limited.
And thank you very much for showing up here for the presentation.
Yeah, not a problem. Jason Bates, our Director of Environmental Health for Calaveras County. Cliff Edson, Chair of the Board, is a primary contact on the Sigma work group for Calaveras County. I'm an alternate along with Brian Moss, but I kind of wanted to attend today to hear Peter's presentation and also hear concerns from the board, from your board of directors here. I think the county and our discussions, including our thing, is that we have a coordinated effort with CCWD and Valley Springs Public Utility District, and that we're protecting obviously our concerns, looking at the rights of the property owners that are affected by this, and then the coordination with the general plan and land use development in that area. So looking at our efforts are coordinated not only with CCWD, but also Valley Springs Public Utility District and the property owners there. So I think this is a good start to the discussions that we're having. And we look forward to working with you guys in the future. So we have, you guys obviously been performing the monitoring of the wells in that area over an extended period of time. We have some data on new wells that have been drilled and also wells that have been drilled in the past. But that's a one-time snippet as far as monitoring of data that we have. But I think it's important that we, share the data that each agency has, and as we move forward and we look at what's best for the citizens of this county.
Question.
You have a question for Jason?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Do you request when somebody comes in and gets a well permit, and I'm guessing I know the answer to this, but I'm wondering if there's an opportunity when somebody does come in to drill a well and get a permit to drill a well, is there an opportunity to hand them a sheet of paper and say, look, we have this well monitoring program, a little background of it, would you like to volunteer to be part of that?
Yeah, I think there is an opportunity for that. And I think that's where we can start sharing what data we want and information, and kind of start doing that outreach to people.
We're not currently doing it.
We're not currently doing that. And especially if we have more, as you said earlier, Mr. Davidson, we do have some egg production wells going in. Last year we had a couple in that area, and so I think that gives us an opportunity in the future to perform outreach and see what people would, if they would want to participate in a monitoring program. So
I think it's a great idea, Jeff.
No question for Jason.
Go ahead.
Jason, looking at the timeline here with you and the county, can you kind of give us an idea of where you're going to begin to work on forming this GSA? And
I think, Mr. Moss, who is the former director, provided a presentation to the board about a year ago, last April, I believe. Obviously, we've been our efforts have been in the recovery of the Butte fire, but now moving forward, I think that, we'll start bringing this before our board here in the next month and coordinating our efforts with CCWD and Valley Springs Public Utility District, so we're not waiting at the 11th hour having to make a decision. So, and there's a lot of, as Peter alluded to, there's a lot of things happening in San Joaquin County, Stanislaus County, and looking at, I think right now exploring what is going to be best for Calaveras County.
That brings up a point that concerns me because, I don't know how well the county knows our capability. The water district, in many of these agencies, the county is the water authority, and some of them do not, or the municipality is. And they know that they're sending a representative that actually understands their water rights and that sort of thing. So I think it's really important that we begin to coordinate our efforts and send a representative down to that groundwater banking authority, because I can assure you that they're not saying, hey, by the way, Calaveras County has 19,000 acre foot reservation on the colony that we might be able to use. They're not doing that, and I doubt the county's doing that either. You correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, the county knows that we are, as far as the East San Joaquin groundwater basin, that we are the source for that basin. As far as the groundwater coming into that basin with the Murden Springs.
Right.
So that's.
My point
But
is-
as far as what you guys legally have, and that's, I think Peter representing on that work group is to be that voice for CCWD and coordinate that.
Yeah, Peter has not been attending.
Yeah, he has.
He has been in our meetings.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Peter has been attending.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
We're there, buddy.
Unfortunately, it falls on the same time as our board meeting, so, and sometimes that's why you don't see Peter in this room for certain items.
Okay.
Yeah, so you do have representation there.
Any other
Peter-
questions?
Peter was gonna try to get the meeting changed so it wouldn't interfere with our board meeting, but he wasn't successful. But I'm pleased to hear you today, and I know that for years, Brian has attended periodically, and we've talked about water, we've talked about the wells, but now it's because the state is saying, you will do this, that it's coming to fruition. And if that's what it took, that's all right.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we have a coordinated, I would say a coordinated approach. We're not duplicating our efforts, and also, working with the planning department, the general plan, but also the information that we have as far as property owners that will potentially, that are within the zone that was brought up earlier in Peter's presentation. So I think between all of us, we have a lot of good information, and we just need to work together and protect.
I have a couple of questions. One thing, now this plan is going to have projects in it, and I'm curious as to what are they anticipating the funding source? Is it going to be, are agencies going to be expected to set up a fee base to fund these projects? Is it going to be around the grants that are going to be applied for to fund these projects? Some of these things will be non-cost issues like land use decisions and directing, the county can direct residential land use, close to surface water sources, and we can do some things like that. But when it comes to these projects, what are they saying, how are they going to be funded in the future?
Well, I'll let Peter maybe talk a little bit about that, because there is some Prop 1 funding with that, so.
Yeah, as far as I know, that we haven't gotten to that point with what that's going to look like for funding the groundwater sustainability plan effort. I guess at this point, like I said, the county, San Joaquin County has applied for funding through Prop 1 for some of the technical aspects, pulling together the data, the initial data sets, which includes some of our data that we have and technical studies. And so I think for the initial effort, it's going to be grant funded for the most part. But I don't think we've gotten to the point where we figured out what that will look like. And, obviously, I mentioned earlier that, obviously GSA does reserve the right to charge impose fees. But, I don't think that we were there yet.
Thank you, Peter. Actually, if there's any more questions for Jason, I know I have one. Does anybody else?
Nope.
Jason, and that is that to me, this is really hitting home to the county's need to get a water element, really done for their general plan. And do you see any movement from that standpoint at the county level now with the Sigma and other activities that they're more serious about that?
Yeah, it was interesting, the first Sigma meeting I attended was 2 days before the Butte fire started, so the timing. But after that, I met with Peter Maurer, planning director, and have been keeping him plugged in with these efforts and understanding that, that having that water element as being, that needs to be plugged into the general plan, but also this being, it's not just the GSP or as far as the East San Joaquin groundwater basin, but throughout the county, so.
Yeah, okay, good. Well, and if there's the opportunity, depending upon how far Peter goes with that, anything short of a full, water element, we definitely like to participate, in those discussions, yeah.
That sounds good.
Mr. President, if I could just know before Jason leaves, I want to thank you for all your incredible effort on the fire recovery. Having seen you in action during the fire and afterwards, I couldn't be more impressed. And we're lucky to have you, Jason. And he's doing the work now to leading the effort to deal with some of the nasties of the hazmat after the fire. And of course, that's in our watershed for New Logan. So we really appreciate that work, Jason.
I appreciate it. I have good crews there. Give you guys a quick update. We're about, as far as household hazardous waste, we removed household hazardous waste on 98% of the property signed up. So that's, we keep having some stragglers come in and stuff, differentiating aspect, but we're close to about moving close to 50% of debris and ash removal on the property. So our goal is to have that, cleaned up in April, beginning of April sometime. And just real quick, I know a side note, before I leave, I have a countywide GIS meeting on the Butte fire recovery, but we target our initial areas looking at the Calaveras River and those areas where we had public health and environmental impacts to our watershed. So it was strategic in how we looked at selecting parcels for debris removal and cleanup and looking at our resources. And also with that, with site access, knowing that we weren't going to be able to access some of these sites during the heavy rain season. So again, I appreciate that, and any information that you guys want to have regarding our cleanup efforts or any concerns that you have, by all means, reach out to me and I'll address those. So thank you.
That's really good to know that's how it was targeted. I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
What's that?
I didn't realize that they targeted it specifically to start with the watershed projects versus watershed first.
That's good.
No, thanks again, Jason, for your efforts, and
Yeah.
looking forward to working with you on this schedule.
I want to make one thing, if he's going to leave, I just want to, for over a decade, I've been trying to talk about the fact that this is not a new issue. For the last 50 years, that groundwater basin has declined a foot a year. It's in overdraft. It's there are land use decisions being made in San Joaquin County that are to the detriment of this groundwater basin. But in our own county, we have the entire Highway 12, Valley Springs, Person, Wallace, that are all on wells. And it has always been the reason that I've worked so hard to try to get some sort of a project on McCallney is to have the ability to serve those communities one day with surface water. That is why it's so important that we protect that 19,000 acre feet on McCallney, because those communities one day, in their logical areas for growth, we need to develop a surface water source for those communities. It's super important. I mean, the groundwater is not going to turn over in our lifetime.
And also, not only are they on wells, but many of them are on very limited, poor water quality wells.
Absolutely, there's a huge level of arsenic and
Yeah,
issues up there. It's just terrible water quality.
Well, good, a few more metal buildings, you can start throwing some money in on that after that.
Whatever you want,
Okay, any other questions for Jason? Thank you again, Jason.
Thank you.
Good, Peter?
So, yeah, with that, did you have any other questions at this point?
I do have one, and that is that if the DWR decides that they're gonna have this one plan, and I know this is going out to 2020 before it really gets going, how heavy-handed do you think they're gonna be in forcing it so that our interests really aren't included in this, and it's more to the interests of, the San Joaquin Valley rather than us?
Well, I think that's, the GSAs need to make that determination on what they want to do with regard to one plan or multiple plans. So I think, obviously, Dave mentioned that we need to make that decision on the GSA formation. And then eventually, part of what that work group that's going on down in San Joaquin County is looking at the coordination agreements that are going to be necessary amongst those GSAs once they're formed to develop a plan eventually. Because there are going to need to be some coordination agreements that are, and so obviously we're going to see those things come before the board over time. This is something that we're teeing this up for the board at this point, and the county as well, just to know that this is coming, and this is going to be multiple years of effort and input from the board as well.
Okay, so from now on, we're going to be hearing, well, since you're busy on the first board meeting, then we're going to be using the second board meeting for status from this.
We will definitely be reporting back to you on developments as they occur, because obviously we got some important decisions to make by 2017. And also, I just want to know, this is, we could have an entire program and staff around this one issue now with the legal requirements of the Groundwater Act, and this is something that Peter's taking on in addition to all the other grants and surface water right issues that we have to deal with. So I can't thank him enough for his effort, but I know this is going to be an ongoing investment of our time and money. There's no doubt this is going to be time-consuming and ultimately expensive to get to a point where we have to plan. But again, as Director Mills noted, we have to be a part of what's going on so that we can make sure our interests are protected. And we will be.
I've got a few comments I want to make. Scott, do you have anything you want to say?
Nope, moving on.
Dennis? Thank you. Well, first of all, it's California's finally coming to the realization that they're going to have to manage their groundwater. In California and Texas were for a long time the two remaining states in the entire U.S. that did not have groundwater management programs. So the situation is broken and it needs to be fixed. And I know that there was a lot of discussion as far as who's going to regulate and manage and whatnot. It's a real challenge when you try to get private landowners managing a public resource to volunteer to do the best job they can. Doesn't mean it's impossible, but in many cases it nearly is. A public resource has historically been viewed as, get it before somebody else beats you to it, and utilize as much of it as you can. So I think the idea of conservation is going to be a challenge, and I hope I'm wrong. I hope we get everybody volunteering to manage it in a very long-term sustainable way, but we'll see ultimately what happens. As a result of that, we're gonna, it's only, as we've been discussing, it's only right that we prepare ourselves to participate in that effort so that we protect our interests. And I agree, Dave, this is a huge cost to the district as far as staff time and commitment that it's gonna take, especially as we move forward with the plans and things like that. And so, because of that cost to the district, we need to start planning for that sooner than later. However, we need to do that. And it may be a hard one to swallow with a lot of our ratepayers that don't necessarily see their benefit to groundwater management in an area that they're not involved with. But at the same time, it's the bigger picture. Working with UMRA, identifying as things that, David pointed out, maybe even a tie-in to where we can, the whole Calaveras and or McCollum River system can add to that groundwater enhancement, programs. Using that surface water is really important. At the same time, there may be other entities in this county that can work with us or that choose to partner with us on using some of their water to move into those areas too, if that's of significant benefit to those various entities that we have throughout the county. So a lot of outreach I see, and hopefully we'll see more bones than clubs from the state in regards to how they try to get us or they entice us as well as the other water managers to participate. So anyway.
You might want to look at this, Jeff, as a budgeted line item in our next budget. Just identifying and accepting that there's going to be a cost involved that might be significant at times, and admitting that in public so that everyone knows if there's something here.
Yeah,
I already took notes to add it to my presentation this morning.
good.
There you go.
Thanks. No, I agree. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
Good job, Peter.
Good. Peter, do you need a break or can we move the award of the contract 4A?
Yeah, did you have that other?
You want to take a break for only an hour? All right, let's go ahead and take a quick 5-minute break. One question or whatever. Okay, let's go ahead and move to item 4 on the agenda, 4A, the award of consultant contract for CCWD's Urban Water Management Plan update. Sure.
Thank you, Mr. President, board members. Peter Martin, Water Resource Program Manager. The item for you today is a award of contract for the 2015 Urban Water Management Plan update. I know it's 2016. So just a little bit of background. CCWD is subject to the Urban Water Management Planning Act, which requires district updates its Urban Water Management Plan every 5 years for planning purposes. We meet the 3,000 connection threshold that's required for doing one of these plans. As far as I know, we're the only one in Calaveras County that developed an urban water management plan. But more than that, it satisfies many legal requirements for water supply planning. Ensures districts eligible for a variety of state grant funds. It's very important for that purpose. Almost every state grant these days asks if you have their water management plan updated. And also, it's it helps us meet the compliance reporting requirements for the legislation in SBS 7X-7 for a 20% conservation reduction by 2020, which we are on target to meet. The 2015 Urban Water Management Plan update. Obviously we're going to be reporting this year on our progress made on that. So, and we're going to update the water supply demand projections, reliability, other new requirements and methodologies are included, including some new things about population numbers as well. And then updates to the district's new systems and their descriptions. One thing I didn't put on here is that our conservation regulations will have to be revisited. This last year we went through the 2.5, 3.5, all that. So, our water storage contingency plan is going to have to be addressed within this plan too. And also provides an opportunity to communicate to the public on sort of strategic visions for the district's water supply. So it's an update every 5 years. So we put the request proposals out to 5 different consultants. We only got 2 proposals back. They both were very good. We went out and I think we just anticipated that we would get a lot more proposals, but we did get 2, and they both were good. The consultant work for this effort is budgeted in the Water Resources Program budget. And based upon the review of the proposal, I recommend the award of the contract to RMC Water Environment. That proposal, the specifics are within your board memo as an attachment.
What was the other company?
Yeah, I was gonna ask that.
The other one that provided a proposal, Peterson Brewstab. We also put the, just if you're interested, put the proposal out to NV5, Coastal Engineering, and Kennedy Jenks. We did not hear from them.
Well, they're, as we talked to them at the ACA conference, they're totally inundated by requests.
I think, unfortunately, the timing of my hire, we're on an abbreviated time frame here. A lot of people probably got a leg up on us and grabbing all the consultants. That could be part of it.
Yeah.
What was the difference in cost between Peterson Boosted?
It was about $6,000. So they both came in just around 9,000.
We're familiar with this group?
We have done significant work with them through UMRA.
Where's RMC?
Yeah, through UMRA, with the Mokwise plan most recently.
I remember them.
RMC is also doing their water management plan for Amarillo Water Agency as well. We've got some familiarity with them. This is kind of their bread and butter. They really churn these things out every 5 years. But they do have the experience within that particular realm.
So you need a motion for acceptance?
So moved.
Second then?
Okay, so we've got a motion and a second.
Okay.
Public comment.
Well, actually, can I just, I just want to add one last slide.
I'm sorry.
You'll see that there's an optional task in there for a water supply study. And that is to support recommendations to the mandated plan that came out of AB 142. Basically, Amarillo Water Agency is going to do the same thing on their side of the river. And what it is it's a technical study that can provide recommendations basically on a climate-adjusted model, looking at full build-out scenarios for the McCollum River to support recommendations that would go into that plan. It's basically kind of, Dave, you could probably explain the importance a little better. But
Yeah, it's to inform the study, the report that the Secretary of Natural Resources is to prepare under AB 142, and to make sure that we have accurate information there about our future water supply needs, so that any decision that's made on wild seed designation does not compromise our ability to provide water supplies for the future. So that study, as Peter mentioned, RMC is doing that for AWA. We've been working with Calaveras PUD. We will probably partner with them on our similar long-term study on our side of the river, and that will be a separate contract that will be brought back to this board for consideration. That's not part of what's being requested today. We're getting a proposal right now, or a more developed proposal right now from RMC to consider as part of that.
And the fact that we're going to partner with CPUD makes it not as expensive.
Hopefully not. That will,
Yeah.
we'll have to share costs, come up with some equitable basis to share costs. But, it's fortunately, at least the timing coincides with your water management plan update, because basically you can take the information that's there, which is countywide, but specific to the MOC, you can take that and you can just extend that out to build out. So that, I think that is one fortunate thing. But in the end, and just to let you know the timing on that, we recently met with Gina and SIBO at AWA. We're targeting to complete that work of the long-term study by the end of this year, so that we can hand that to the Secretary of Resources and get that embraced and incorporated into his report.
It seems to be very beneficial that both Amador, AWA, and CCWD are using the same consultant studying the same river and in the same period of time. I think there's going to be some cost savings there. Hopefully that RMC recognizes that as a duplication of their efforts, and we see a little bit of cost break for them.
And I did recognize some of these ladies from Mokwise. Remember, they were here at the meeting, so that they're familiar with CCWD. And I also see that they have Contra Costa Water District as one of their other clients, another CCWD. But they're a little richer than we are.
Peter, I'm sorry to cut you off like that.
Yeah.
Did you have anything else?
No, I just wanted to add that last slide, that makes sure that that's not part of this proposal at this time. So.
Thank you. Comment?
I think it's important too that, that we coordinate this with the county, because the general plan, again, needs to have this kind of information stream in it. It has value, and hopefully they will use it. So the other thing is that as we saw in the post-fire, the water flows increase because of the lack of vegetation. That does have an impact on this kind of an effort. And if we can identify vegetation that's in essence taking away our water from our watersheds, that would be very helpful. The optional task cost, are we going to do that separately?
Yeah.
Just be sure that we keep it.
Yeah, so the optional task you know, it hasn't been budgeted for, so that's why we kind of, you know, decided to not include that as part of this proposal at this time. So,
I would only ask that we just track it separately, just to be sure that a cost for the management plan is one thing and 8142 is another.
yeah, I think that's a great idea. I'll definitely write that down.
I am familiar with RMC just through all the various UMRA work and all. My disappointment with that group is that they've never looked to engage local professionals to, you know, assist, and that's one of our big pushes, has always been local opportunities. They do have a long history with Amador Water and UMRA. I have noticed some documents too recently where their billables are different. In most particular, January 15th, RMC noted the proposal to provide UMRA with some project database and management implementation versus the bill that they included in our proposal. So I don't know if that means that there's wiggle room. Fortunately for us, they're actually the lower billables on our project, and I thank them for that. But at the same time, that tells me there may be some negotiation potentially. So as we move forward with the idea of an additional optional project, I would like to see that go out to, you know, to bid for everybody, but at the same time, maybe have some discussion with that, just kind of little fiscal diligence. Yeah. But that's my biggest concern is trying to get more local professionals involved and keep some of that money locally. A lot of their outreach events and things like that could easily have been supported by locals. Anyway, my 2 cents. Yeah, let's go ahead and open it up for public comment at this time.
If I may, my name is Peter from Gentleman. Thank you for the information. I appreciate it. I noticed that a lot of things the state wants us to do at the local expense, which is very nice and generous. But nobody mentioned the two tunnels that the state wanted to do affecting, I don't know how much directly or indirectly, the San Joaquin Basin also. Is anybody gonna put those numbers into the account? So the two tunnel and the bigger side of the train can fly through, are they gonna be diverting Sacramento River water around San Joaquin County? So it's gonna be depriving San Joaquin County and a farmland, the Bigelow's land, that might have some effect at the end result, how much is going to go down to San Joaquin Valley. It would be nice to be informed what's the effect going to be by and for who and for how much the San Joaquin Valley watershed. And I haven't heard anything about it, maybe I missed it, but it does really have effect the San Joaquin Basin. Those two things. And I haven't heard anybody talk about what's going to happen to the sanctity of the fish. Also, that nobody was talking about how it's going to affect the fish life.
Sounds like a good question for San Joaquin County.
Yeah, but right now they want us to pay. Sooner or later, the dollar figure is going to be popping up. And what are we paying for what, and for what benefit? Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. I'm sorry I didn't open up 5C for public comment. So that was appropriate to do discussion now.
That's a good question. Yes. Is there any grant money, Peter, that might be available for these type of updates in the future?
Are we talking the studies or the water management plan?
The management plan.
No,
Since they're
typically,
mandated, I mean.
yeah, typically they don't offer that for.
So they just mandate we've got to do it and we got to come up with the money to do it.
You're just getting this
Yeah.
right now.
I've been for a long time, I just.
It'll follow the broad relief money.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, the funded mandate.
And we got a couple fish for you too.
Yeah. Good, okay. Well, let me go ahead then and bring item 4A back to the board for vote. Okay, can we have,
First and second, just a vote.
we did have first and second, right?
Right.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and do the vote. Roll call on the vote.
Yes. Director Underhill?
Yes.
Director Mills?
Yes.
Director Radaman?
Yes.
Director Davidson?
Yes.
And President Strange?
Yes. Okay, so at a 5-1 vote, we awarded the consulting contractor to support the award to RMC for the CCWD's urban water management plan. Good. Okay, we'll move to item 5A, receive and file the fiscal year 2015-16 mid-year operating and capital improvement budget, the program budget review. Jeff Meyer.
Excuse me for a minute while I set up the PowerPoint presentation, but I also want to take this time to thank Peter for leaving me a little bit of time left on the agenda.
I'm looking for seconds.
Jeff, would it be easy to kind of meld 5A and 5B into one?
Actually, they are two separate items.
Okay. Sentence versus, oh, we're gonna okay, this. Trying to maximize efficiency. Yeah, there we go, 6-6.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. President, members of the board. As you had mentioned, President Strange, what the item before you is to receive and file the 2015-16 mid-year operating and capital improvement budget review. What I'd like to do at this point that one's working, but that one isn't. That's odd. I'm not able to advance that particular slide. The item before you here is a review of the budget and a attempt at a forecast on year-end projections for both revenue and expenses, and also to give you some update on some of the challenges we're facing. We're going to go over briefly the budget assumptions, the assumptions that went into the creation of the 15-16 budgets, both on revenues, expenditures, what's involved as far as capital outlay is concerned, and also debt service. Going to give you a little bit of foresight into the revenue and expenditure projections, take a look at the CIP budget, and also to talk about the interest reserve fund. This is something we brought up in the Finance Committee meeting last week, and I want to bring this to the full board, because these are our reserves, but they're also a source of funding for portions of our operating budget. And then we'll take a look at the 16-17 budget process. So just briefly on revenues, and I really don't want to get into a lot here, but we have two types of revenues: operating revenues, non-operating revenues. The operating revenues are basically our water and wastewater sales and fees and services provided directly to operations. We're down on our operating revenues by about $350,000 from the prior year. This is the budgeted amount. And the majority of that is because of water revenues. The water consumptive revenues we projected down again for 15-16 by about $250,000. This is on top of the $350,000 we dropped it from 13-14 to 14-15 because of the drought. Our water consumptive revenues are down by approximately $600,000 a year. That's revenue we no longer have in our budget due to water conservation efforts. In the non-operating side, this is like property taxes, standby fees, power from either New Hogan or NCPA, those types of revenues. We projected property taxes to rebound and up about 12%. The split here is we do 85% operations. Property tax goes to support that. 15% of that revenue, or about 380 or 98,000, goes into the special project funds. And in this particular case, the increase we were projecting is about 241,000 from prior year. We still don't have the numbers. We don't get our property tax distribution until February. So we're waiting to see where we stand. We get about 55% of our property tax in February. The majority of the balance in May, and some additional true-up money in August. We budgeted 50% or $50,000 less of hydroelectric revenue coming out of New Hogan, just because of the drought. We got very little revenue last year, and we had some miscellaneous increase of revenues. So overall, our non-operating revenues were going to go up about $252,000. What that means is that we combined the two, operating and non-operating, so we had a decrease of just over $98,000 from the prior year budget. The majority of those can be traced to the continued reduction in water consumptive revenues, plus we had a little bit less revenues associated with Flying Acres. We had some one-time revenues when we brought Flying Acres on board last year for hookup fees, connection fees, inspections, and so forth. Obviously, we weren't going to have those, so I had to back those out of the budget. We also have what we call transfers in. We bring money from different funds into the O&M budget to cover costs that are budgeted for in the general fund. Our water rights expenses, as you remember, and we talked about it this morning, water rights expenses keep mounting. We have more needs. We do have a water rights portion, a reserve in our 108 account, interest reserve fund, and I'll touch on base on that shortly. So we're going to bring almost $200,000 in to fund this program. Now we have to be concerned because we don't have any way to replenish the water rights fund reserve. So we're taking one-time money to fund an ongoing problem or an ongoing expense. So this is something we have to keep in mind. We have some CIP, capital outlay, and capital R&R expenses that are coming in. For CIPs, we have about $70,000 worth of staff time, predominantly engineering and inspection costs on our CIP programs. We generally offset that in the CIP programs. This is where we erred on the budget side, because we identified the costs in the operating budget. We are going to transfer money in from the CIP budget and also the R&R funds to cover those costs. Well, when we're doing our time allocation on our timesheets, when people work on projects, the time is being allocated directly to those other funds. So we no longer have to bring the transfers in to cover it. It just has reduced our salaries and benefit costs in the operating fund because they're being recorded directly in the CIP and R&R funds. It still balances out. It's just we no longer have to do those transfers for the R&R projects and the CIPs.
So that, okay, because that's, again, our operating expenses are necessarily reduced because we are doing that.
Yes.
But having it as when you start transferring consistently, you start to get into some other issues in finance, and you understand that.
Yes. The net effect will be the same, Director Underhill, because if we are having our expenses in the operating budget, we would offset those expenses by bringing money, revenue transfers in to cover that. So that would be a net zero. What's happening now is those expenses are occurring in those exact funds where we're going to bring revenue in, the transfers in. So it's still a net zero.
And this is nothing different than what we contemplated planning and using our internal staff to perform our projects. They're billing their time against those projects, and those costs are being covered directly from those accounts. So we just want to be clear. I know it seems a little confusing, but it's no different than what we plan to do. It's just that one step of the transfer in is not happening.
Might be a little helpful here to explain that when there's consistent transferring between various accounts and projects, et cetera, there's a tendency to look a little disjointed.
Yes.
And that's what we don't need to see.
And
And
what-
even from an auditing standpoint,
Correct.
they have a problem with that.
And when you also look at it, these costs are identified by timesheets. When an individual works on a specific project, they identify the hours that they work on and that pay on that project. So everything we have is tracked in Springbrook, and it identifies the salary and benefit costs associated with that person specifically on the general ledger account, so we know exactly who works, the time and effort that's involved in that.
If I can ask, would this be a stretch because our customer bill has changed? There used to be more detail on, Did that impact that?
No, it did not.
Oh, okay, well,
It's something
that was
separate.
something.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and your director, Andrew, you were talking about the breakout of the R&R component of the rates, and that was something we had on the bill for a long period of time. We simply took it out just to try to make it more straightforward on the bill, but also providing, I mean, all that information is, we make that available to the public, it's just not in that same format. We have that available on our website. And we could certainly go back to the prior way of doing it if that's the desire of the board at any point in time.
Well, we can discuss that.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the things I do want to point out is, under that item, you see $291,700 from reserves for capital equipment and projects. That is funding capital outlay expenditures under the utilities department, specifically repairs on the TV van, about $102,000, some SCADA upgrades of $50,000, some Bobcat purchase about $79,000 budgeted, and an excavator for $60,000. We did not have money for that in our operating budget, so we had to bring in one-time money to fund these projects. So that's where that money is coming from the Special Projects Fund, which you remember is funded by property tax revenues. So that's basically the transfers in for the CIP. The last line item there is for debt service. We recognize our debt service in our operating fund, whether it's the BBVA loan, with 2013, which gets 2/3 of its funding level from the expansion funds, the Ebbs Pass Water, Jenny Lynn Water, Copper Cove Water, and Copper Cove Sewer, and the other 1/3 comes from our operating budget. So we have to move funds from those expansion funds over to cover their portion of the debt service. This loan, or BBVA loan, matures in September 2017. So we're getting close on that one to be, and that's about $2 million a year. However, Jenny Lynn Water Expansion Fund has historically has had very little connections, capacity income to offset their costs. So we budgeted for $380,000 to come from this special project fund over to cover their share of the debt service requirement. However, we have actually had 22 connections year to date to Jenny Lynn Water Expansion Fund to a tune of $233,000. So it's helping to offset that. So right now, if there are no more connections, that number will come down to about $140,000. And I'll get to that when we talk about the 108 account, interest reserve fund. So things are looking up. It still has to pay back the special project fund, but it's a good sign. And then we also have money for the Umpqua loan coming in from the R&R account, $398,000 for principal and interest loans for water and sewer, and $75,000 in interest from the unallocated interest on this fund for interest only on the operations headquarters, which we will start paying principal on in fiscal year 17-18, once the BBVA loan is paid off. Because those funds are then, the operating side will then be shifted to pay off the loan. And they're paying back our own funds, it's an internal loan.
Because that 3 million came out of, what part of reserve?
Some of the expansion funds. So this is a quick review of our revenues to date. I also provided your board with a copy of the budget status report. This report was provided to the Finance Committee at the last meeting. It's part of their monthly reports that we make to them and explain to. This is just something that shows you a little bit more detail, and the information from this slide right here is taken directly from here. So if you look at the thought process here is we're going to look at operating revenues, non-operating revenues. We're at operating revenues, and that's basically the predominantly water and wastewater sales. We're at 50% for the year, and 6 months you're supposed to be at about 50%. So we're there. That's the good news. The bad news is we reduced our budget, water revenue budget by another $250,000 for conservation. That means we are pretty close to the target. Again, our water consumptive revenues are down about $600,000 a year due to the drought.
You know, Jeff, just to note, I think that's one thing as we move forward in the development of the budget for this year. I think we really need to give a full accounting on the cost of drought. And I was just thinking, we've got the $600,000 lost revenue in water, but we've also got that $50,000 on lost power at Hogan, and then of course the additional cost incurred to try and operate our system when we have lower flows and poor water quality coming into our plants. True.
Is there a measurable chemical cost of things that we've had to do differently because of the drought? I mean, I know we've had some manganese challenges and things down there. I mean, is that stuff that we can actually measure?
I think we can. I think we can come up with a pretty good estimate of what that's costing us.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So two things. One is, when do we kick in as far as the hydro revenue and potential increase if we get higher flow or, higher lake volumes and things like that? When do they allow us to, what time of year do they allow us to kick up the hydro production on that? I know a long time we have to hold, and then finally we can.
We don't have anything to do with it.
Well, it's done by water meter and allocated accordingly.
Yeah, I assume you're referring to the production in Hogan, is that?
Right, in New Hogan, in relationship to, I know that we have an anticipated revenue of, less than what, $50,000 hit or $25,000?
$25,000 anticipated revenue.
Right. But is there the opportunity, if we get rainfall and all that we can reduce that 25,000 and get it to close to what was originally anticipated? I mean,
I can answer that. And it has to do with the power grid here in California and the cost. In other words, what are they charging? Right now, it's about $28 a megawatt hour. And it really depends upon where the power entity goes to sell their power, whether it's to Noble Energy or wherever it might be, as to what that value is going to be. And so the market right now is very depressed because of the cheap gas that we're getting, natural gas.
And one of the other obvious questions, the obvious point here is, I think you're alluding to, is the lake level.
right.
And I believe there's only 3 months of power generation last year.
Right.
So in a normal year, we can get maybe 75,000 to 100,000, even higher revenues. We're hoping to get back to maybe 50 to 75 this year, but a lot of it all depends on how much rain comes down.
Right.
I just hope it rains a lot this weekend again. But then again, it's a catch-22 for us because the sediment and the runoff makes things more expensive for us to filter or to treat our water.
And that was really my question is will that number change or could it change with increased precipitation?
We won't know at this point.
It could change
It could change.
in a positive way for us.
Right. It can only go up in my mind. It can't get any worse than it was last year. And our MCPA is not tied to production. The increase is tied off a construction cost indicator put out by the federal government.
Okay.
So it just grows incrementally.
Yeah, I was specifically referring to New
Right.
Hogan.
I just wanted to throw that in for informational purposes. As you see, our non-operating funds are only at 10% of budget, that's because we haven't received property tax or standby fees. And hopefully when I come back to talk to the board in February more about the budget, we'll have those numbers.
I can help there. The state has already said that they're going to make our property tax shortfall whole. So just to let you know that we will not be negatively impacted due to the fire.
That's good. So we are at about 42% of budget, and I think we're pretty much on track to receive the revenues that we were anticipating. We have a little bit more in revenues as far as water meter installation charges and inspection fees and some development, because we've had a little bit more development, and some of that's coinciding with the construction down in Jenny Lind area. And so we've had a little bit more in that realm. If that continues, we'll get some more developer reimbursements and hookup fees and such. But I think we're pretty much on track, which in my mind, if we hit budget, I'm happy.
I just have one question for Dennis. Okay, you said the state will make good our property tax. Okay, they can make good for this year?
Only this year.
Only
at
this
point.
year.
That's all
Uh-huh.
we agreed to.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, that's,
The transfers in, basically what we're going to do here, as I mentioned, is it covers the costs associated with it. When you look at debt, it'll cover the cost, so our transfers in will be meeting budget. The only thing that we're going to be short on, again, is for the CIP and the R&R projects, just because, as I mentioned, the costs associated with it are being charged directly to the project funds, the salaries and benefits, so they don't show up in the operating fund again. Now, on expenditures, some of the budget assumptions were that we increased FTE by one person. That's where we had the administrative assistant that started January 1 in utilities. Utilities was sharing an admin assistant between utilities and engineering. And it's going to make a huge difference, not only for that department, but also for accounting and other departments. It's much overdue. Bringing Tiffany, and that was, Tiffany was brought over from customer service over there, so it worked out well. There was a 2% COLA increase for SEIU, and a footnote there, in July 1 of this coming year, they get a 3%. That's in the contract. So we're going to have to adjust for that moving forward. The PERS rate for the classic employees was increased to 17.5%. It was about 16.85, so it's a slight increase. We are anticipating an increase for next year. We just have not received our actuarial information. They're running way behind in that regards, but we'll have it ready when we do our budget. One other thing is there's the employee share and the employer share of PERS. Employees pay their full portion of the employee share. So that has been a cost savings implemented over the last several years.
What percentage do you think?
8%. They pay 100% of the 8%, if that makes sense. And increases where medical insurance costs were projected to increase 6%. And that, we're fairly close to that. But when you look at the individual programs, when you look at the PERS medical, some were higher, some were lower. It depends on the blend of where the employees, what programs they belong to, and we'll be looking at, again, we'll have those numbers as we move forward to 16, 17. So looking at by department, we reduced the board of directors budget by $85,000.
Can you say that again, please? Maybe a little louder? Reduced board of directors budget by $85,590. Wow.
Well, I want to take
Especially bullet item 1 and 3.
1 and 3, correct.
I'm pretty sure those were, all those reductions were done by the previous board.
Thank you.
And, however, just to note, there was a one-time reduction, and I don't want to burst your bubble, but the $40,000 of that was a one-time reduction on election costs. Next year, we do have 2 seats coming up for election, or this year, I should say, in November. So we are going to incur some costs there, and so we'll know more about that when we go into the budget.
But let's think about how much we've saved since we did that stretch to the 5 years.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that has been a,
Yeah.
So on a 2-seat election, is it going to be 40,000 per seat on average?
No, no, no.
It's going to split it.
It's going to split it, and it's going to be much less than 40,000. It'll probably be less than 20,000 for the 2 seats.
Thank you.
This was just a guesstimate at that particular time because we had no idea what the county would be charging us when we joined the general election versus a ballot election.
and they want these seats so badly that they're gonna give up their board meetings and mileage, is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we can revisit the board compensation policy one more time, soon.
Well, is there a percent decrease then from previous on that? Do you, any kind of ballpark percent decrease in expenditures? I know we had the dollars and cents, but percentage-wise, what that might represent?
For budget or to actuals?
No, from the budget for the directors, period.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't have that.
14, okay, that's my thing.
And it's really, what I'd have to do, to be honest with you, is back out that one-time cost. And because we have to look at the consistent numbers. So, continuing on the departments, general management decreased $67,000. So that mainly was due to the decreased salary and benefits due to the retirement of Larry Diamond, the assistant general manager. We kind of looked at reducing water, outside legal costs. Matt decided to donate pro bono for half of his work. And then we did increase some professional services for water rights, and we're going to have to really look at that moving forward.
There's a line item in the budget.
Well, we have that in water rights,
Yeah.
water resources budget. And we want to start tracking that. We can do that. The admin services budget was reduced by $59,000. Most of that was moving one employee over to engineering. That was Robbie. He went back to engineering from admin services. We did move $30,000 from the water conservation budget from water resources, because that was something that Joel managed. Engineering tech, we increased their budget significantly, $400,000. Part of that was bringing Robbie over, but the other was bringing on another engineer and bringing on another body, moving them over from utilities over to engineering. So it's shuffling of people, but it was necessary, and they're still struggling.
You said that last year, that it was necessary at the time.
Yes, it is. And you can bring Charles in here and he'll say he doesn't have enough bodies because there's so much work that needs to be done. Heck, Bob was called, Bob and Robbie had to go down to Valley Springs to meet with Caltrans. And I can't remember the intersection they're talking about. I believe it's there on 26.
And Vista Del Lago.
Vista Del Lago. Caltrans is going to do some improvements there. I believe a stoplight. We are going to be required to move our water and sewer lines at our
On
dollar.
our expense.
And they're looking at doing that project in 2017.
Well, increasing that budget line item in engineering also is significantly decreasing our outside expenses with consultants.
That is correct. Plus, even, I think, more importantly to that, we're gaining a lot of good in-house knowledge of how these projects should work. Because when you hire a consultant to do certain tasks, you spend a lot of time hand-holding those consultants because they're asking you questions. So you're feeding them information so you don't save the entire amount. If you have that knowledge base in-house, you have a much better coordinated effort. And our utility staff and engineering staff are starting to work together real well now so that they work together to determine what projects are necessary. Instead of engineering telling utilities this is what we're going to do, they're working with the field guys, especially those that do the repairs in the field to identify, and the operations staff, what's working, what isn't, what do we need to do for our ongoing maintenance issues, whether it's at the treatment plant or in the distribution system, so they're really working together.
And I can appreciate you bringing that up, Jeff, because that really is a big change. It really is the fact that we have people that are going to have to continue to operate, that those facilities will be built. They're in the room from the beginning of the project to be a part of that. And I've heard some really positive feedback from Teresa that's really appreciated by those people out there who do have that. So, that's exactly what we're trying to do right now on the Virginia Wind project with pretreatment. We formed a project team. We're doing everything collectively with a different set of eyes, different expertise involved in the room, so that I think we're going to come out with a much better product at the end. And so that's kind of just a different way to do business that we've really taken on at this point.
I would just hope that those utilities people have all the support they need, from outside knowledge, just to let them know about how difficult some of those projects are. Because it's one thing to have homegrown intelligence, and you have to keep them aware of outside things that have been invented or, are being used outside.
Oh, there's so many great ideas that they can bring to the table based on their own personal history working with that every day, and then also what they understand within the industry and have learned from
Right,
colleagues.
right.
So you're absolutely right. And I don't want to miss those opportunities. I mean, and it's just on all other issues that we deal with outside of even the projects. The fact that we've got people working closely together and communicating. Charles and Teresa, I've jokingly said, well, I want to tear the wall down between your offices so you have that much contact with one another as you're doing your jobs, because I think it's critically important that we do that. And I think we're going to see some real benefits out of that.
Yeah. And our operators have to do ongoing training. They go to conferences, and so they're staying up to date on the current trends. We're also going to be looking at there's an RFP out for the pretreatment, the design of it. So we're going to be using a outside consultant to design it. So they're going to be able to provide their input and work with our guys to come up with the best option available for us for that area. But I just think we're moving in the right direction. In utilities, we did increase their budget by $240,000. Some of that was capital outlay. We did show a $45,000 increase in CPPA rates. That was a small increase. However, I really think we need Larry Diamond back, because Peter took his place on CPPA board, and they are raising rates 2 cents per kilowatt hour next year. Larry was able to manage that. So we're going to be looking at a $200,000 hit next year.
Next time, I would like to see the reasoning why. Just for my own curiosity, what happened to their budget that requires them to do that? That's a pretty significant increase. That's
Yes.
15% or whatever, something. It's high.
Yes.
And I'm curious as to what cost drove them to do that.
It's actually about a 23% increase, because it's gone from 8.5 to 10.5. A significant portion of that is the drought, and they're playing catch up because they're having to supplement their electrical output and Maloney's with others. But the other part of it is over the years.
Let me get this straight. So they didn't produce enough of hydroelectric, so they had to purchase power.
I believe that's correct. Plus they're paying for infrastructure increases. And I can't remember, was it Western Contract or something, that we get charged. And a lot of these are catch-up, where they have to create their budget, yet they don't get the information that they need until 6 months later. So sometimes they're a little bit catch-up there. Plus their rate stabilization fund, they've been using that over the last several years to help mitigate where other agencies say, hey, use it. And all of a sudden, when it's no longer a viable option, then you have to see this great big spike increase.
I think the director gave us his point, though. I'm sensing that what you're looking for, what I would be looking for, is a report from CPPA to really give us a breakdown on how did we get to this point of 200,000?
Sure.
So that they, in our budgeting process, that we can then forecast into the future to say, is this something we're gonna face now 2 or 3 years down the road as a continual catch-up? Or when we get a sufficient amount of water coming through, is it going to automatically bring us back whole? Because they were on the public power grid purchasing power.
Exactly.
Okay.
If it's okay with your board, what I'd like to do is when we come back and start having real detailed budget conversations, I can have Peter come up and we can do a joint presentation as part of the budget to talk about CPPA, and we can bring better documentation to you so you have a better understanding.
It was just last month when I
Just
asked
recently, yeah.
for an audit, let's find out, let's know all the parts of CPPA, because it's just so easy to say,
So
it's what we
is this,
expect of them.
is this rate increase gonna be temporary then, when they don't have to buy? No, I don't see that. So,
Yeah.
so what I'd like to see, and I'll bring that up again at the future agenda items, but let's look at that tunnel tap and some inline hydro opportunities again, and maybe have a presentation by Matt and his group. Because as we see that jump going, we have a real opportunity to do some realistic, and almost instantaneous financial benefit for us in looking at those.
Well, it really goes to, the long-term management of that reservoir.
Yes.
How they're gonna operate that thing as to whether or not, we can depend on that. But, this doesn't just affect, the water district, it affects all the public agencies throughout the community.
Right.
All their budgets are gonna be affected.
It does. The other thing it does is pushing our costs up, because when I first got here, we were down to 4.5, 5 cents per kilowatt hour. You looked at solar, and you looked at our CPPA rates, and you said, it's not worth it. Well, we're starting to get up to a point where CPPA rates, although they're not as high as PG&E and others, it kind of makes us want to look at alternatives, whether it's inline or whether it's solar or other things that we want to maybe take advantage of. Now, the cost differential isn't as great as it was previously. So it starts us down that path of having more conversations.
Yep.
Would it be a benefit to us or make sense to interact with CPPA, invite them to a meeting, reach out and get a report directly from them?
I think that's a great idea, and then actually, I made a note of that we'll put that up down as a feature agenda. Yes, thank you.
Good. Okay. Anything else on that agenda item?
Oh, I've got a lot on this agenda item.
We have a motion to.
We do have a
All you gotta do is adjourn, and I'll give you.
Say, yeah. This is Jeff's favorite time of the year. There's 3 times of the year that Jeff really enjoys. Preliminary budget, adopted, and then water resources. We decreased this by 33,000, mainly because we moved water conservation out. I won't rehash what you talked about groundwater, but we really have a need to look at our water sustainability program. And we don't have ongoing revenues for this. We've been funding it from a transfer from reserves. So this is something we want to really take a look at, whether it's groundwater, whether it's the ABE 142, MOC-wise, whether it's our water rights, all these urban water management plan, mandated plans, everything we need to do, permitting, we need to create, and this is something that Dave and Peter and I have been talking about, creating the outline of a water sustainability program so we can bring it to your board so you understand what it's going to need, a long-term approach to meet our needs. And we'll see how it meshes with our current budget and where we have those funds. And non-departmental, we increased this by 82,000, mainly for debt service. This is where we have our debt service for our loans and retiree health costs. Now,
Excuse me, let's go back to that, debt service
Yes.
increased by 77,000?
yes, because
Due to what?
due to some of the loans that we have, are some of our BBVA loans, not our BBVA, but our UMPA loans for the water, capital R&R, the way they are scheduled, that they increase on a yearly basis the amount of debt service we have to pay. The percentage.
And
because it's more backloaded than front-loaded. And that's what we had to do to meet our debt service coverage. Because we have to sit at 120, we're supposed to be sitting at 125. And if we had more on the water side front-loaded, that would create issues.
Has this been discussed in the financial committee?
Yes.
So you guys have heard this already, to some degree? Okay.
Yeah. But not that particular question.
Yeah, not that one.
Okay.
Yeah. This is just a brief list of the capital outlay projects that were approved in the budget. Again, $291,000 in funding is coming from the Special Projects Fund.
What's going on with those manhole covers in Arnold?
They were purchased. We have them. I don't know where they stand on that, but I think the snow may have delayed that, but I
We
do.
know where the manhole covers are.
I mean, why are they being replaced? Are they,
If that's something that we have an I&I problem in that area with the existing manholes, and Teresa worked with State Water Resource Control Board, I believe, to come up with a plan to address the I&I issue and our permitting issue.
I&I?
Yeah, by making this investment, we're able to operate our plant and with an agreement that we have with the regional board in a way that's less expensive for us than otherwise. So making it part of us in our permitting for the plant, the Arnold plant, we needed to do this as part of our effort to limit the I&I coming into the plant. So we instead of taking it in 1 year, we split it up and are doing it as a 2-year project. And so this is the first installment for this fiscal year.
And thank you for also the manhole covers or the traffic covers on Main Street in Palisade. They were keeping me awake at night. Don't cars home. And we had somebody out there within the last week sealing those covers up.
Yeah.
Thank you, because that's part of it.
For the public I&I is inflow and infiltration, basically water getting into water off the street getting into our system.
That never went to IRWM for a project or anything?
No, we just found out about it towards the end of last year, and so we had to go ahead and act quickly. So we did this within 3 weeks. We were able, the State Water Resource Control Board visited the location. They talked to Teresa. They said, we will allow you to continue under the existing permit if you do this. And we talked about this during the budget meetings back in June. It's a $40,000 project. Our staff are going to be installing it. This is a summary of all our debt service obligations. The BBVA loan, that's refinancing of the 2004, which was refinancing of a number of prior issues. At the end of this year, we're going to be down to about $2.2 million. So, like I said, September of 2017, that'll be paid off. The UMPA loans, at the end of this year, we're going to be down to about 5.8. We're going to be using a significant portion of the water loan to pay down Reach 3A, and we've received the bids for that, and so we're moving ahead with that. Charles is working with USDA to review the bid packages.
Yeah, and Jeff, just for the board, I was going to mention that in my GM report, but since you mentioned it, we did have a bid opening on the Big Trees project and 3A, and both were within our estimate. We got very competitive bids on that. 3A, it was in particular came in actually $4.1 million. That was a price we were, I think it was a highly competitive price. So those are going to come back to you within the next board meeting or two.
Okay, because I was going to ask about that.
Yes, we got
Yes.
to get going for the construction
Yes.
season.
And part of the working with USDA is they have to review the bid package to give it their blessing before we can actually award it.
Because spring is here and we're starting work, right?
Weren't we estimating about $5 million on 3A originally?
At least 5 million. So
4.1.
that's, and also on Big Trees, the bids we initially received were higher. Charles went back and rescoped the bid schedule to tighten it up and to eliminate some of the things that we didn't absolutely have to have, we could change. And as a result of that, we ended up with a little lower bid on that, so it's 1.1 million. So we're saving some there. But in any event, we had a full room with bidders and a number of bids on each project, which was good to see. And there was a lot of a tight range within bids, so we know that that's a realistic price that we get.
Okay.
Excuse me, one of the items that we looked at through the finance committee was seeing if there's any of these loans we could pay off sooner. And we have identified, there's within the loan documentation and the bond issuance, there are certain requirements. You pay premiums if you pay it off early. There is one loan that we anticipate we want to pay off early. That's the Wallace West America loan. But the next debt service payment on that would be August. It's an annual payment. So we'll be including that in next year's budget. There's no sense in paying it off now at this particular point in time. The U.S. Bureau of Reclamation note, that's New Hogan. Per side fund obligation, we've come down dramatically on that. We're getting down on, we'll probably have 3 more years of payments after the end of this year, which is very good to get that paid off. And then obviously the building. Now this is a summary of year-to-date as of December 31, 2015. This also corresponds to this particular packet I provided to you, which is the budget status report as of December. You can peruse that if you really want to get into the detail of each individual line item. Salaries and benefits, again, we're supposed to be at 50% of budget. When you look at salaries and benefits, we're just under 50% overall department-wide. Services and supplies, we're about 38%. I want to caution your board because sometimes our billings are in arrears. So the services we receive in December, we don't get billings until January or February. So it is an estimate at this point. It's not locked in. Capital outlay, we're only at 43%. I do anticipate we're actually going to go above budget, but I'll get to that in just a moment because we do have some carryover purchases on that. And debt service, we're at 83%. The reason for that is on our major loans, you have principal and interest in September, and then interest only in March. That's interesting, I lost one. The one, it's there, okay. It's on the department-wise.
Yeah, we get through it.
Yeah, so unless you have any questions, I'll skip over that one. But the key here is in looking at the departments is that Board of Directors is $23,000 under budget. This is a year-end projection. I looked at 6 months, took into account about half of the percentage of expenses, looked at some of those that I knew we were behind in our actual costs and our billings. So I project even with reducing your budget, you're still going to be under budget. General management will be a little bit over. Some of that is miscalculation in the budget of salary and benefits. Plus, when we look at water rights, we're going to be a little bit not water rights and all the costs associated with that. We're finding that we're spending a little bit more money on that as we move forward. Engineering and tech services is going to be under budget by about $400,000. The reason for that is, again, we're not recording their time on R&R projects and CIP in their own general fund. It's going directly to the projects. Plus, on top of that, we were going to transfer the inspector from utilities to engineering. That has not happened yet. So the budget was in engineering. The expenses are being recorded in utilities. Admin services, we're looking at coming pretty much on budget online. Utilities is going to be over budget by about $180,000. Part of that is our overtime costs. Already we're at 90% of budget. Most of that is related to our response to the Butte fire.
So we'll get that.
We'll get 75% of it back. And we anticipate that getting back about $61,000 out of about $80,000 in costs.
Question, are they going to be allowing us in-kind contributions to some of that cost?
No, we're going to get reimbursed. There's just a strict cost share, 75-25. And we also have had a significant increase in the number of line breaks and after-hours repairs. And some of that has been related to the drought or the drop in the water table that has caused a number of breakages in our distribution system. And I was talking to Randy down in Jenny Lynn area. They've had probably twice the number of line breaks that they had in recent years. But that's also due to the age of the distribution system as well.
And just to let you know, this is something we're looking at within the development of the R&R projects for the board to see within the next month, is to actually come up with projects that we can try to get ahead of this, replace the stuff that we continue to see problems with, continues to fail, the infrastructure that just needs to be replaced, as opposed to going in and constantly repairing it. So that's going to be using our crews to do that work. So that's something you'll see very soon.
Any of that will go out for grant funding, you know, that you anticipate, Dave? And if so, how does this whole issue of evaluating our, you know, the costs to the customer, and the fact that we don't meet a certain threshold to allow us to get some of those grants?
Yeah, on the, you know, just think about on the water side, for example, as he's talking about with the distribution crews with Randy, you know, those kind of projects probably aren't going to be ones that would score real well for grant funds. You know, that kind of ongoing project, unless, I mean, there's certain aspects of water replacement that you can go after grant funds as water efficiency type projects or water savings issue. But I doubt these would be the kind of projects we'd be looking at for that. But I do think, again, I think we can make a really compelling business case, that this is a much more fiscally, you know, wise move is to replace stuff that we know. I mean, there's certain infrastructure we know, you know, the type of you know, the pipe that it is, when it was manufactured, the issues we've had with it, that we just need to replace it. We need to get it out of there and really putting a Band-Aid on it, which happens over and over and over again.
Yes. And utilities is working with engineering to identify those areas where they believe they have multiple breaks, repetitive breaks, to identify those. And so they can target those areas to, again, reduce the outages to customers, reduce our time and effort in repairing them, and also after-hours repairs. And then water resources, we're looking at basic, we're going to be close. And again, I'm sorry, I don't have that, for some reason that didn't come up. But water resources and also non-departmental, we're going to be pretty close to the budget. I do want to come back to this slide because it's the same as the other one, but if total expenditures, I believe, are kind of projected are going to be under budget by about $205,000. Again, that's related to the direct billing of engineering and utilities time on R&R and CIP projects to those particular funds. Finally, if we're looking at the budget summary, revenues less expenditures, and then you add back in transfers in, we're looking at pretty much on line, on track with our budget. And that's at 6 months. And, you know, things will get clearer as we get closer, but I don't anticipate any needs for any budget adjustments at this time, or add additions. So that's why you don't see it, and we're going to be monitoring it, but I think we're fairly close. And staff is really keeping track of their expenses to make sure they're kept in line with their budgets. Teresa has done an exceptional job of monitoring and relaying that need to her staff as well.
Good.
Now, CIP projects, on the water side, we did add a couple projects here. We did add the the Jenny Lynn Water Pretreatment Plant and the Blagan Mill Restoration Pond Project. After we adopted the budget, those are the two at the bottom end. Obviously, we added dollars in. These are being funded right now. At this portion through capital R&R, for this particular portion of them, we are working closely with FEMA to do a 25-75% grant match on the Jenny Lynn pretreatment. And we've got approval on that. Where, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we're going out to bid on the design part of it. And on the wastewater side, we're moving ahead. We've pretty much finished Copper Cove Lift Station 22. We're rescoping the project for the Vallecito Storage Pond expansion project. That rescoping has gone to the T-stand. and working with DWR to get that rescoped and get it approved. The reclaim permit, that's kind of the wild card in the whole discussion. We're hoping to get approval from the state on that to see if they approve of our fix. And we're moving ahead with that. Charles is putting a lot of time and effort in that.
Question, Wilseyville tie-in,
Yes, sir.
it's not labeled or it's not identified, it's not included on here?
Correct. What we got some grant funding for to do the planning phase. We are waiting to, we got initial decline of offering us grant money on that because of the fact that our sewer fund is upside down and we don't even qualify for 100% match because we don't have enough sewer revenues to cover our costs on the sewer side. And this is something Brian Jolly brought up in the audit. We kind of talked about this for years. We're still working with them to identify ways to be able to maybe meet their requirements. But not only do we don't cover 125 on our debt service coverage ratio, we're less than 1. And they will not even grant us 100% grant when they know that our O&M budget is upside down on sewer. So we're working to try to find solutions to that right now. And we're working with them, hopefully come back in a month or so to your board with something that we could do. But short of having additional revenues, we're having to look at expenditures and how we tie this whole process in. It's going to be a tremendous challenge because we could get $4.5 million of free money.
Benefits a severely disadvantaged communities.
It would, and that's why they're proposing to give us 100% grant money, but overall, our sewer fund is negative.
Yeah, and again, that's really disconcerting that we're in a position where we can't get this funds when we have severely disadvantaged community and 100% funding, and they want to fund this project. They've already funded the planning for the project. And if we don't get it, the reality is we're going to have to continue to operate with 2 permits. And in time, when those permits are renewed, we're going to have to do improvements to the infrastructure, and then we wouldn't have the grant funds to do it. So this is something we're not going to put away anymore. We're going to bring this back as we move forward with budget this year and try to address it.
Well, please let me know if or when an elected official being involved in those discussions would be of benefit to the district. I'd be more than happy to participate.
I talked previously about our interest reserve fund. This is where we hold most of our reserves. It's Fund 108. This is where we hold the 90-day emergency fund, the water rights reserve, CPI cash flow, special projects, the rate stabilization reserve, and investment income. So as of December 31st, we were sitting at about 10.7 million. It's kind of stayed stable over time. Those are the particular levels that we have within the reserve. We're going to come back and revisit those dollar amounts, particularly the 90-day emergency reserve based on our proposed operating budget, because we want to have that available. Water rights reserve, if we spend our allocated $200,000 this year, it'll go down to $2.8 million for the beginning of next year. We don't have a mechanism to replenish that. Our cash flow reserve is to use for our CIP projects, especially those that are grant funded, because you're always paid in arrears, sometimes 2, 3, 4 months later. So you have to have cash to manage those projects. Special project fund, that's where we get our property tax revenues. 15% of that goes in there. At this particular point in time, like I said, as of December 31st, we're at 1.3 million. Once we take out the capital outlay that we're going to, 291,000 that we're getting, the anticipated property tax revenue of 398. Bottom line is, I figure by the end of the year, we'll drop down about $40,000. So but again, the only way we replenish that is property taxes, and we'll find out more in February. The rate stabilization reserve is required by BDDA for our loan. There's a requirement of a certain amount of revenues that have to be set aside. That reserve amount will go away when we hit into, once we pay off the loan, and we could use that money at that time to replenish our water rights reserve and some of the other reserves that we have.
Jeff, you might want to reach out to Leslie with the assessor's office and just be sure of what she sees right now and how that would affect us in our budget for next year.
Yeah. I do anticipate too that we'll have, when I come back to your board and your finance committee in February to give you updates, that I'll have at least the February numbers, and those are about 53 to 55% of our total revenues collected. Yeah, we'll know better then. Any questions or comments regarding the mid-year before I move into what our next steps on the budget for next year?
No?
Okay, the last two ones are going to be real quick here. We're going to need to come back and in February start talking to you about goals for next year on our CIP Capital R&R program. I believe it's your February engineering committee. Charles Palmer is going to give you an update on the 1 to 5 year projection on the capital improvement projects that he'd like to do and what's required. So that's going to be a key part of it. We'll come back in the February board meeting. We're going to look at the operations and maintenance budget and some of the challenges facing it. I've talked about CPPA rates, the 3% COLA for SEIU, which is most of our employees, the $600,000 in reduced water consumptive revenues that we're going to have to somehow manage. We got the water sustainability program and everything else that we know we need to provide to define that program and provide a consistent source of funding, as well as we talked about grant writers, because we're challenged in that area. Once we go through that process, departments submit their bid requests in March. I'll review it. The staffing levels are reviewed and approved by the general manager. The draft, I'll prepare and along with Patty, to prepare the draft budget for the entire district. It gets reviewed and revised by the GM with input back and forth by the finance committee. We've already started having discussions. And then we'll submit the draft budget to finance committee for review and comments. It'll come to your board on June 9th for the preliminary budget, and then the proposed budget to your board for adoption on June 22nd. And at the next meeting, now I just also want to put a footnote in our next finance committee meeting is February 18th. That's a Thursday instead of a Tuesday, and we will be discussing the budget at that time as well. And that's my presentation.
Good, thank you. Any comments on the fiscal year 2015-16 mid-year update? We have a motion? Or do we already have a motion?
I think we got a motion from,
Let's see, it's an out.
what's that?
Yeah,
Joe?
so moved.
Okay, seconded by Director Ratterman. Public comment?
There you go.
We've had a lot of discussion here at the board. Seeing no public comment, let's take whatever that's called, vote.
Roll call.
Roll call of the vote. There you go, please.
Director Underhill?
Yes.
Director Mills?
Yes.
Director Ratterman?
Yes.
Director Davidson?
Yes.
And President Strange?
Yes.
5 votes.
5-0. Thank you. Okay, next new business, 5B, review and acceptance of the fiscal year 2015-16 second quarter investment report. Mr. Meyer.
Yes, this is a motion by minute entry to review and accept the quarterly statement. This is our investments through December 31st, 2015. This item has been reviewed and recommended to be forwarded to the full board by the Finance Committee, and I'll answer any questions at this time.
You
I'm just reading through here.
bring up the discussion about late and the percentages and
Sir,
direction that we'd like to go with from the investment.
thank you, Director Mills, for reminding me. I was trying to be brief on this one.
Yeah.
It was overtime on the other one.
You can still be brief.
What we are finding now is the yields we're getting from LAIF, which are about 43, 44 basis points, are significantly higher than in the past. The money market rates we had been receiving from Umpqua was right around that same amount. I just got notification they are changing their rate structure, so it'd be significantly less because they're just not they're paying out more than they can afford. So what we're looking at now is probably we're shifting a number of our investments into LAIF because one, we're getting good yields. Heck, we can't even get, we get 6-month CDRs, the insured CDs, 40 basis points. We're actually getting more in LAIF now than we are for those because the traditional bank investments are becoming, again, traditional bank investments where they don't give you a whole lot in return. Yes, the Feds increased their Fed funds rate and the lending rates went up, but the yields that they're paying on CDs and such have not gone up. However, so we're kind of shifting more into LAIF, so that's where we're parking our money, getting a little better return. And we have been surveyed by LAIF, and when they came out in October for their annual meeting, they're looking to implement a LAIF 2. Which is similar to what they did back in 2000, 2007, 2008, prior to the recession, where their strategy was a little bit more medium to long, or short-term to medium-term versus short-term, where they can give higher yields if you're committed to leaving your funds in there for a longer period of time. And it looks like they're moving in that direction, so this could be a great alternative for us to park some of our money for maybe 6 to 9 months and get higher yields than the regular LAIF. So the investment outlook is improving a little bit. We're still challenged, especially if you get the municipal side, because with the economy the way it is, especially the equity markets, and everybody's aware of what's happening in the stock market, everybody's fleeing there, buying municipal bonds, which you pay more for, which drives down the effective yield. So again, we're in an interest rate in challenged environment. However, I need to remind everyone, safety, liquidity, and then yield. Those are the goals and our policy that your board has adopted that we go by.
And the acronym is SLIDE.
I'll move for acceptance of the second quarter cash and investment report.
Okay, we've got a motion.
Speak to the point of liquidity.
Did you want to?
Well, my thought is if we can get a second, then we go into
I'll do a
discussion.
second.
Okay, we have a second by Director Mills. Discussion, go ahead.
Liquidity is critical for us, especially when we're looking at the timing of our CIP projects, because we're talking large ticket items. And so we have to have cash on hand to be able to pay for those. If we lock up our funds in, say, 6, 9, 12-month CDRs, we would pay a penalty for early withdrawal, just like you would for a regular CD. So we're trying to do the timing of those. It's a little bit of a challenge now, especially when we have to deal with snow up there in Reach 3A area, in Arnold and all that. But what's even more critical here is when we look at our traditional revenues, as I mentioned, we get rate revenues on a monthly basis, but a large portion of our revenues is property tax. February, May, and supplemental in August. So we have to be able to deal with the swings in our revenues and especially when we got to hold on to some of those revenues. So the revenue income is there. We have debt service when you have to look at large outlays in September for our loans, principal and interest. So it's kind of managing not only our expenditures and revenues, knowing where they're coming, but cash flow as well. Because you can put in a budget, but you have to, it's like managing your own checking account. You can get paid a paycheck once a month, but it all depends on when you have to pay the bills as to how much you have in the balance of your account.
Good. Any other discussion? Let me open it up to public comment. Any public comment? Seeing none, let's take the roll call.
Director Engelhill?
Yes.
Director Mills?
Yes.
Director Radman?
Yes.
Director Davidson?
Yes.
And President Strange?
Yes. 5-0 vote to accept fiscal year 2015-16 second quarter investment report.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board, and thank you for your patience.
You bet. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Okay, good. That will get us old business, nothing to report there. Item number 7, then general manager's report. Dave?
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, I submitted, just to let you know, I submitted a letter of support to CCWD and their request to the State Water Board to have the curtailment, one of the effects of the curtailment was a moratorium on new connections applicable to their service area, and they asked for a letter of support. I mentioned that at the last board meeting. They needed that letter, and so I went ahead and provided that to them to submit to the state board. So there's something positive as a result of that. Next, I just wanted to just let you know I've been asked to chair Aqua's Headwaters Headwater Policy Principle Implementation Work Group. The Headwater Policy Principle, a policy statement by Aqua is one of like 16 policy documents that the organization has. And it's based on promoting better management of the headwaters area so we don't end up in a situation like we did with Butte Fire. We're now into implementation, the effort to implement that. The original effort, Bob Dean played a huge part in that and led that, was chair of the document, drafting the policy statement. We've now, we're underway in implementing that, trying to, both at the state and federal level. And so I've been asked to chair that effort. I've been close to it since its inception, so I think I can contribute to that. And again, I think that's really important for our communities to have. We have to see better management of the forest, recognizing the importance of the water supply. Lastly, I just wanted to just to let you know and to gauge interest of the board. We have the 2 meetings scheduled in February, the 10th and 24th. And we are proposing, staff has reviewed the schedule for bringing forward our presentation on the R&R and the other budget prep. And our thought is we've got a finance committee on at the very beginning, not finance, an engineering committee at the very beginning, the first week of February. At that point, Charles is going to be presenting the initial draft of the R&R program list. We're going to take those comments and use that to build a presentation that we'll come to the board with. That'll be the bulk of what we take on in our meeting before the board. And instead of having our board meeting on the 10th, I would recommend that we consider moving that meeting to the 17th and canceling the meeting on the 24th. I can certainly participate in the meeting on the 24th, but I will not be here physically. I'm going to be in DC for the Aqua conference, and as well be on doing visits with our members of Congress on behalf of the district. I'll spend a day doing that, and also spend a day with Aqua and primarily on the headwaters issues. But that's the week of the 24th. So again, just to let you know, just to gauge interest of the board, if we could eliminate the meeting on the 24th and move the meeting on the 10th to the 17th, that would be the recommendation. We can still get everything done we need to and be in position to have the R&R in the budget before you in a timely manner.
Question on that, David, potential conflicts is and I've got to look, I apologize for not having that, but the T-STAN IRWM, the advisory meeting and all, or the advisory committee, are they having that on the 17th?
And we discussed that at staff level. I think they have calendared a WAC meeting, Water Advisory Committee, but I don't believe they have a board meeting scheduled that day for the JPA board. But that was something I thought about. We do have a camera meeting on that day.
That was going to be my next question.
We'll make sure that that our work here is done in a timely manner so that you can get out, get lunch, whatever, and have time before the camera meeting starts.
Excuse me, and we also have another meeting planned with Forest Meadows on the 17th.
Yes, that's true. We do have that meeting on the 10th, so I would just try to, if that would be acceptable to you, Director Underhill, to have that rescheduled within the same week. Or maybe at a later time that day.
Up a week, well, whatever.
Yeah, we definitely, that's an important meeting. We don't want to miss that one. I know they're very concerned about how what's happening with the golf course, and we want to keep that meeting within that week if we can.
Yeah.
How about other director schedules on the 17th in particular?
I'll work around.
Okay. Can we take action on that then? And go ahead and,
As president, you have the ability to do that, but again, I wanted to daylight that so that the board could weigh in on it now.
So we're talking about canceling the 10th and the 24th, combining them on the 17th.
Yes.
One meeting in February.
Correct.
yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
Doable.
Sounds like we got support or tolerance by the board. So, yeah, we'll do that for next month. That's great. Okay? Anything else?
No, that's all I have to report, thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dave. Board reports, information, future agenda items. We'll start to my left. Bertha.
Oh, good. Anyway, on the 17th, and I just wanted to make sure that this will be talking about 3A in detail up in Ebbets Pass. That project 3A in detail.
When, I'm sorry,
With Charles is gonna make a presentation.
oh, yes, on the, as part of the R&R project, yeah,
Uh-huh.
before the board, that will definitely, that's one of our, and just to let you know, that is one that we will be, we're already preparing to have a meeting with the public. As soon as we have the contractor, construction contractor under contract, we want to meet with the public and we want to make sure that, you know, we've got to be very, we've got to have very good communication with the public
It's
because there
gonna
will
be
be impacts.
handled just
Yeah.
perfectly. Want to make sure that as part of that, we have all of our right-of-ways and all of that stuff already taken care of.
Yes, and that's something that Charles has spent a lot of time on to make happen. So, yeah, we have that, some last things to finish up with the state, but we've made the progress we need to on it.
Because we have to reach a certain level in order to get our grant funding, is that not right?
It's part of our conditions to move forward and to do it in you know, yeah, you know, and that's why, you know, Jeff said we get the free money. I almost cringed, Jeff, because yes, we do, and it's extremely important to get those grant funds, but there are a lot of conditions, and so it does make it a different, you know, it would have been a different time frame. We probably could have moved to, you know, a quicker time frame if we weren't under those, but the reality is we need those funds, and that's critical to the job, so we do that. But yes, that's all something that Charles and Jeff are working on right now.
That's fine.
Do you anticipate when that public meeting, I assume up country, will take place?
That's up the hill.
Up the hill, up country, up the hill. We better than down the hill.
We haven't picked a date yet, but I think it's, you know, having been through this before with a project where, you know, it was a project that was in people's backyards, a water transmission replacement project, and as soon as we had the construction contractor under contract, and we met with the public, and we really, it was a good opportunity for them to see who was going to do the job, for us all to make sure everybody's nodding, understanding that the, you know, clear communication with the public, so that they're not surprised by what we're doing is vitally important. And that if there's any concerns or issues that come up, they know who to contact, and they don't have to, you know, feel like that they're being ignored.
And I'm assuming that we're waiting for the contract to be awarded so that they have a presence at this meeting also, the contract?
Exactly. So right now, Charles is reviewing the bids. You know, we have to go through the references and things just to make sure that they are, you know, that the parent little bidder is you know, has a responsive bid, and that they are qualified to do the job. So that's what we're going through now, and as soon as we get through that, we will be coming to the board with a recommendation. I can't wait to get those projects under contract because that's a big
It's
milestone.
only been 3 years.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, I cut you off. Great opportunity to outreach to your constituents up there in that meeting, for sure. Anything else?
No, that's all.
Okay. Director Mills.
Thank you. Thank you for being at the chamber dinner last night.
Oh.
It was great to be able to show that we're present amongst the business community. From what I understand, had done an MSR on this, but I've never seen a report from them. I don't know what their thoughts were.
Director Mills, I'm not aware that they completed that work yet. I know that they were in the midst of it, and they had engaged our staff to get input on that. And we were working with them, but I haven't heard anything on the outcome of that. So we'll get you a status report on that.
Please, because they brought up in the last meeting Monday night that they were on the CSAs, and they were doing a complete discussion with the CSAs. And that it was basically stated that the review was completed. So without seeing a report, I don't know what that all meant.
I asked them about that issue back in spring of last year, I believe. And the comment that I received at that meeting was, well, your coverage area is, the entire county that isn't currently being covered by anybody else.
So unless we got some information, we won't talk to you.
Yeah, that's kind of what my take on that. But to get that officially on paper is another.
Yeah, thank you. That's all I have.
I got nothing to report.
I have a request, just with all the news out of Stockton and Flint and you know, I have my own opinions about this, but I think it would be perhaps timely to have some sort of report that press release, you know, by our general manager, just about our treatment process and water quality, just to I'm not getting a lot of I'm not getting anything negative about this, but I just think we have an opportunity to talk about the steps that we're taking, particularly with the grant at Jane Lynn. But I think people might want a refresher course on what we're doing to treat our water and our water quality, and then something that might direct them to a water quality report online. I just think it'd be a good opportunity because it is a headline, and I think it's when this all shakes out, it's going to be a story. And I guess there's another one coming up in Ohio. But I think I saw it on the news yesterday. Flint's water bill is $109 a month, and yet they still were not able to make the improvements for whatever reason. They didn't have either the desire or enough money or the foreclosure crisis. I'm sure there's a series of events that led to the demise in that system. Not unlike what we've been through, but I just think that it's important that we assure the people that we are providing not only responsible management, but not only good quality water, but responsible management to make sure that doesn't happen. So
Probably have a board lacking the foresight to create a capital improvement fund.
most likely it's not. It's I'm sure that's the case. Or in that case it would have been city council probably, but and then and Stockton's changing their operation slightly, and they're getting. There's just a little bit of hysteria about this, and I'd just like to head it off at the pass. Their operations.
You don't mean to put you on the spot, but anything out of UMRA, that the Forest Service watershed, the Cornerstone stuff they're looking at? I did attend the UMRA meeting. It was just like old times. They did. We have a grant for this. What was the acronym for this thing again? You're talking about the partnership with the Forest Service and the Cornerstone project and the couple of meadow restoration and other.
Right. Well, anyway, the Forest Service is partnering with UMRA to do this, to do some projects. There's, I believe it was 9,000 acres. I forget the name of the project, but it's up between Dorrington and Bear Valley. They're going to do some forest thinning, some meadow restoration, and it's an exciting opportunity. Certainly going to benefit the watershed, but it's a drop in the bucket on what needs to be done. But it really seemed like the Forest Service wants to step forward and is beginning to recognize that although this project may be relatively small, but this is what needs to be done up there, and it's great to see them working in that direction. That's really about all I say.
Yeah, good.
We can add to it.
Okay. I attended the Macomb River Association meeting a couple of Fridays ago. There was a presentation by East Bay Mud staff, really looking at the bead fire and the efforts that have gone into that. I missed Peter's presentation that he gave regarding the bead fire and impacts and all. There, I had to leave a little earlier. But yeah, it's still on everybody's attention span for sure. The biggest issue in regarding the bead fires is location, in particular on federal lands that historically have been significantly ignored, so to speak, because of the limited budget that the Bureau of Land Management has had. I mean, when you compare them with their staff in Oregon, for instance, it's just a drop in the bucket, their staffing and financial or economic allocations in this state, which is kind of disappointing, but they do have a new forester they just brought on staff. And so they're looking to, certainly on their lands, do what they envision as their responsible stewardship of that. Hopefully they'll find federal funding to really do a lot of the watershed, soil protection and all that is necessary to protect our water quality coming out of there. The attended the T-Stand IRWM. There was a presentation that Dave gave, in particular, dealing with the WARN Act and our new Malonis storage interests. We had 100% support. There was no lack of support, or lack of a better word. And we asked for a letter of support from them. So Dave, could you give an update on where that letter is?
It's forthcoming. I'm sure we will have that. We'll have that shortly. The board did, yes, it was a unanimous action. There was no opposition by anyone in the Water Advisory Committee, and it was. I'm great to have the opportunity to brief them on the project and get some input that I think is helpful in strengthening it as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of interest by other water entities up there in looking to partner with us should any of this, water storage become available. So it's really really good deal. Camera, I can't really remember a lot of Camera's discussion the last time we had a meeting, but this whole wild and scenic and our due diligence to have to really put together a vision for our water needs on the McCollum watershed, 70 years into the future and more. I mean, the wild and scenic is in perpetuity, supposedly. It's a forever kind of a thing. So our due diligence is going to be really trying to look into the crystal ball to envision what type of agricultural development that might happen up in that lower watershed area with the nuts or the vines or whatever. So it's certainly going to be a challenge and an expensive challenge moving future with that. The last thing on the UMRA is that the Upper McCollum River Watershed Authority historically has been less than involved in a large watershed scale project basis, and it looks as though that JPA is moving into, with a partnership with Forest Service and others, looking to move into a larger influence, or at least an entity that has a much larger, I won't use the term control, but influence of McCollum River watershed activities, including higher up in the watershed. And it certainly is important. We need to see that. It's an area that, the Forest Service, especially with the cornerstone of some of these other grant ones, they've had to look at finding the correct, or at least the appropriate entity to house a lot of the management of those grants and all, because they couldn't do it themselves. And there's a variety of issues and challenges with that. So the one thing that I was most concerned about, and I hope to see the group moving into the future, is looking once again for local opportunities from local professionals as this watershed management, especially the hands-on activity, takes place within those higher elevation areas. So Director Davidson had voiced that opinion as well, and I appreciated that. So with that, kind of ends my report. Other than the future agenda item, as I mentioned before, I'd like to see, if it's okay with the board, a presentation by Matt and his group on some of this inline, the tunnel tap, which was a committee that actually was abolished at the time the new board came on board, so to speak. And so I'd like to have not only the tunnel tap, and I'm sure that they put a lot of attention into that whole North Fork project, and there are challenges, but how some of our other systems might benefit from an inline system, or the evaluation of those. So if you could do that, Dave, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, and we've already, that's already in the works, Mr. President, so I expect in the next meeting or two, we will have that presentation from Matt Swindell.
Okay, I'll close board reports then. Item number 9, next board meetings. We just had that discussion. We're moving into Wednesday, February 17th, 2016, 9 a.m. here in a regular, or in a board meeting. So we'll do away with the 10th and the 24th. And at that point then, I'd like to move into closed session. Items in closed session we'll be discussing: 10A, conference with real property negotiators, Government Code 54956.8, property APN 048-003-190 at 12114 South Convention Parkway in person. Under negotiation, the prices, terms of payment, negotiating parties, Dave Egerton and Robbie Kramer. 10B, item 10B, conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, Government Code 54956.9A, Law Content Investors LTD versus CCWD, Superior Court number 11 CV 37713, and then lastly 10C, conference with labor negotiators, agency negotiators, President Strange, Director Davidson, unrepresented employee, general manager, Government Code 54957.6. Brief. Okay, and with that, we'll go into public comment. Sorry. Anticipating no public comment, we'll go ahead and close the session. Go ahead. Close session. Close the public
Dave,
meeting.
there may be a JPA meeting on March 17th,
Peter,
depending if there's any issues met.
instead of the board workshop on January 27th, 2016, the time is approximately 4:25.
Okay, coming out of closed session, we have nothing to report. Item number 11, we just talked about, nothing to report, sorry. Number 12, new business. 12A, discussion action on amendment to general manager's employment contract. I'd like a motion that we delete paragraph B of section 4, the devotion to the district's business regarding the 72-hour notice prior to absence. I'd also like a motion to adjust the current salary at $161,095 to incorporate 3 different COLAs. The 27th, or January 27th, 2016, a 2% COLA. January 1st, 2017, an additional 2% COLA. And then January 1st of 2018, a 2% COLA as well. So that over the next 3 years, essentially 4 or 6% COLA increases. And then lastly, to delete the last 2 sentences of section 5B and replace them with the following text. Quote, the employee shall receive annual cost of living adjustments as follows. Number 1, 2% on January 27, 2016. Number 2, 2% on January 1st, 2017. And item 3, or number 3, 2% on January 1st, 2018.
And to that,
I'll make a motion.
we might want to note too, that this is only a 1% difference from what was there before.
From the existing contract, yeah, it's a 1% COLA
Yes,
difference.
that's a really good point. My existing contract provides that the COLAs are tied to the management and confidential unit, so that would have been 1% this year and then 1% the next year. So this, what to be clear, this is not what's the 2% for each of the years here discussed is not on top of that 1%. It's instead of that, so it will not be additive.
But it will be written as such in the modified contract.
Correct.
the
We'll
2%.
clarify that.
Yeah, good. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a
To
second?
amend to the general manager's employment contract.
Good. Do we have a second?
I'm offering you the opportunity.
Go ahead.
I would say.
Okay, we have a second by Director Mills. Any discussion?
Any public comment?
Any public comment? Seeing no public comment, can we take roll? Call on the vote, please.
Director Engelfeld,
Yes.
Director Mills,
Yes.
Director Radaman,
Yes.
Director Davidson,
Yes.
and President Strange.
Yes. Vote carries 5-0. Item 13, adjournment. This will adjourn the meeting for today. Thank you.
Good job, gentlemen.